Chapter 337. A mournful voice suddenly rang out. Go. A muffled sound. That disciple's voice was suddenly cut off, but in that short moment, it had already alerted everyone. Instantly, they all turned and pounced over. A black figure leapt up from the ground, but before he could steady himself, his body had already swayed a few times, almost about to fall. In that instant, several magical weapons had already struck over with the wind and rain. Ghostly's heart was cold, but in the end he was not willing to wait for death. Clenched his teeth and flew forward. Unexpectedly, after a few steps, a sharp pain in his chest, he could not hold on and fell down. And the crowd behind him cheered. A few of the Qin Yin disciples had already caught up, stretched out their hands to grab Ghostly. And at this moment, suddenly, the darkness deep in the dense forest seemed to suddenly expand. Like a beast's silent howl, a light flashed past in the darkness. Zheng Shuchang's eyes instantly widened, immediately pounced forward, at the same time sternly shouted, "All disciples retreat quickly!" Before the Qin Yin disciples could react, Zheng Shuchang alone had already pounced into the darkness ahead. The celestial sword in Zheng Shuchang's hand was dazzling, but after he entered that darkness, his celestial sword light could not be seen anymore. Only angry shouts and howls could be heard incessantly. Just when the Qin Yin disciples did not know what to do, a strange figure shot out from the darkness ahead, headed towards where Ghostly had fallen, at the same time flew over to where the Qin Yin disciples were. With the help of those spots of light, this figure was completely wrapped in black. Only a pair of eyes were revealed, glinting brilliantly. The Qin Yin disciples shouted loudly, drew their swords, and charged forward. Unexpectedly, this person's skills were extremely high. He did not seem to wield his magical weapon, but instead grabbed towards the nearest Qin Yin disciple with his bare hands. That Qin Yin disciple, although shocked but did not panic, the celestial sword in his hand slashed down. That black-attired man did not make a sound, as if he did not see it. His grip did not change. In front of the crowd, he caught that celestial sword in his hand. The crowd was shocked. Before they could react, that person used his strength to shake. The Qin Yin disciple who was fighting with him had already flown out, and that celestial sword was actually snatched away by this person. This person's cultivation was high. He was actually extremely powerful. In the darkness ahead, Zheng Shuchang shouted angrily again and again, but seemed to be entangled by someone, unable to come and help. In this strange night, there were actually many mysterious masters lying in ambush here. Although the enemy's skills were extremely high, but these Qin Yin disciples were all from famous sects and not ordinary sect disciples. In their shock, none of them ran away. Instead, they all wielded their magical weapons and pounced forward. The black-robed man seemed to be a little anxious and impatient. He increased the force in his hand, and the immortal sword that he snatched suddenly shone brightly, far brighter than when it was in the hands of the young disciple. However, with a flash of brilliance and the whistling of the wind, the sword actually slashed down in midair. A grand halo directly slashed down towards everyone. The Qin Yin disciples all shouted and shouted. All of them retreated to face the enemy. Unexpectedly, although that person's aura was strong, but it was just a bluff. With one move, he forced them back a few steps and did not continue the fight. Directly carried up Ghostly, who was lying lifelessly on the ground, not knowing if he had fainted or not, and swiftly flew towards the darkness behind. The Qin Yin disciples were shocked and angry. Shocked that this mysterious person who came out of nowhere was so highly skilled. Angry that Ghostly, who was already in their hands, was snatched away again. Ghostly was Qin Yun's sect's mortal enemy, and because he had always been related to Qin Yun's sect, Qin Yun's sect had long wanted to get rid of this person. Now that he was snatched away halfway, how could they take it lying down, and immediately all chased after him? Halfway through the chase, suddenly a whistle was heard. Bright light flashed and shot over from the darkness. In everyone's eyes, the sword seemed to be shooting towards them and quickly stopped to face the enemy. Only Zheng Shu managed to fly up in time and deflected it with his sword, but felt a great shock in his palm and involuntarily took a step back. But the incoming sword also changed its direction, charged up to the sky, and after a moment it fell down, with a sound stabbed into the mud. It was the celestial sword which was snatched away, still buzzing. And with this delay, that black-attired man had already, like a ghost, carried Ghostly and swiftly disappeared into the darkness ahead. And Zheng Shuchang, who was fighting intensely in the darkness, at this moment also suddenly bellowed. Someone groaned in the darkness. Blood appeared. Everyone was shocked, not knowing if it was Zheng Shuchang who was injured or the enemy. Their teacher's kindness was deep. Right now, they did not care much and all pounced forward. Just that they had only reached halfway, Zheng Shuchang's figure had already flashed out from the darkness, landed on the ground, and blocked them. Looking at his figure, although he was moving without hindrance, but he staggered a little. At the same time, he panted heavily. This short period of intense battle, to him, was extremely exhausting. His panting slightly calmed down and immediately quietly said, "The enemy ahead is highly skilled, and there are quite a number of them. All of you must not be rash." Zheng Shu and the rest of the young disciples felt a chill in their hearts. They never expected to encounter such a situation at this place. Zheng Shuchang stared at the darkness ahead. In a deep voice said, "Who are all of you? Why are you interfering in our Qing Yun sex matters? With your skills, you must not be a nobody. Why don't you meet and talk?" The wind howled and the rain poured. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, but for some reason, that darkness deep in the dense forest was actually so thick, like an indelible ink. No one answered Zheng Shuchang's question. Only the sound of the wind and the panting of the Qing Yun disciples. Zheng Shu quietly stepped forward, quietly said, "Father, where are they from?" Zheng Shuchang shook his head slightly, suppressed his voice, and said, "They are purposely hiding their identities. What they are displaying are not their own skills. We can't tell for the moment." Then he frowned, raised his voice, and loudly shouted, "Are all of you still not showing yourselves?" The voice reverberated far in the dense forest, but in the end, no one answered. Zheng Shuchang's countenance suddenly changed, stomped his feet, and said, "Oh no, we have fallen into a trap." Speaking, he pounced forward. The celestial sword glowed brightly. This time it shot straight at the surroundings. There was no longer any shadow shrouding. Evidently those people had all retreated, came like the wind, and left after kidnapping. It was obvious they had planned it beforehand and planned it well. Zheng Shuchang heaved a long sigh, landed. Zheng Shu, while directing the other disciples to continue searching the surroundings, to see if they could find any clues, quietly asked Zheng Shuchang, "Father, what is it?" A trace of disappointment surfaced on Zheng Shuchang's face. Then he sighed and said, "Although the fight just now was rushed, but I indistinctly felt these people did not use evil sect skills, and if the evil sect people wanted to save Ghostly, they would not need to hide. But what kind of people would want to save this evildoer? And there are quite a number of them. Their skills are so high." After speaking, his brows frowned tightly, deep in thought. Zheng Shu was speechless, turned and looked ahead. Only saw the dense forest. Ahead was a stretch of darkness. Where could he see anything? But he did not know. Those people who kidnapped Ghostly, who were they? But no matter what, Zheng Shu walked forward, quietly said to himself, "At least it was better than landing in Qing Yun Sec's hands." He was thinking like that. In this stormy night, deep in the dense forest, his mind seemed to recall 10 years ago, the first time he met Ghostly at Qing Yun Hill Tongtian Peak. After a long time, he sighed in the darkness, continued to walk forward. No matter what the future would be, right now he had to continue moving forward. At the other end of the unknown dense forest, deep in the darkness, another strange black figure was watching Zheng Shuchang and the group of people. It was Mr. Ghost. Right now his eyes seemed to be bewildered, looked very bewildered. After pondering deeply, he still could not figure it out. After a long time, he saw the Qing Yun disciples' search area was getting bigger and bigger, but anyone with eyes would know this was already the sign of giving up. Searching like this, in this vast dense forest, how could they find anyone? As expected, after a while, Zheng Shuchang's voice was heard again. "Forget it, all of you come back." The Qing Yun disciples were obviously eager to hear those words. One by one walked back. Mr. Ghost watched Zheng Shuchang counting the people, then turned and led the disciples towards Qing Yun Hill, gradually disappearing into this dense forest. He unhurriedly walked out from the darkness. His eyes instead drifted far away, watching the direction that group of mysterious black-attired men had gone, staring deeply. In the storm, there seemed to be a voice quietly saying, "There are actually still people interested in him." Chapter 338. Thunder, lightning, gale, torrential rain seemed to be howling incessantly beside his ears. His mind was in chaos, muddle-headed, seemed to be unable to distinguish who exactly he was. Just that in the intense pain, he felt waves of wind and rain brushing past him, heading towards an unknown place. Someone beside him seemed to be speaking. That voice was unfamiliar, sounded anxious, indistinctly heard. He seems a little not right. Quickly take a look. An icy cold hand roamed around his body to check. The next moment, stunned, said, "Why is he so heavily injured?" The person beside angrily said, "Rubbish, he is under that Zhu Xian sword. You think?" He did not hear the rest of the words clearly because at this moment a wave of dizziness hit his head, almost fainted. In his daze, he could only indistinctly feel the sky was still rumbling, the thunder rumbling. The person beside him seemed shocked, quickly checked. That icy cold breath on his hand made him slightly sober. Heard that person anxiously said, "Oh no, his forehead is burning hot. I'm afraid he is having a high fever." So he was having a fever? This was Ghost Lee's last thought, after which he fainted again, lost consciousness. A rumble woke him up from his unconscious state. His first reaction was that it was still the thunder rumbling in the sky. Just that for some reason, although he was slightly awake, but it was still darkness before him, he tried his best to open his eyes to look around, but to his shock, his eyelids were still shut, unable to open his eyes. Following which, an intense pain was felt, but it was not from his heavily injured chest, but from his throat. He subconsciously moved his mouth, hoarsely and softly called out, "Water!" There seemed to be no one around, leaving him alone, helplessly lying on the ground. The thirst in his throat was getting more and more intense, like a fire burning. His lips moved slightly, without knowing where the strength came from. He moved his body slightly, and the consciousness in his mind seemed to be more awake. Ah! Suddenly, a voice came from his side. This voice was different from usual, but it was as if he had heard it before. There was a hint of surprise in the tone of the voice. "You're awake. Senior brother, come quickly. He's awake." The surroundings suddenly quietened down. The next moment, footsteps swiftly neared, walked to Ghostly. Ghostly struggled to open his eyes again, but for some reason, this time, all his strength was gone. He could only vaguely see two figures crouching beside him and behind them. There seemed to be a few more black figures. As for their faces, he could not see any of them clearly. "Water," he once again whispered. This time, the people around him understood. "Quick, bring the water, quickly." His footsteps were hurried as he ran back and forth. After a short while, someone ran over. Then, a cold hand carefully lifted his head, and a bowl-like object was placed next to his lips. The clear water touched his cracked lips. Ghostly's face muscles twitched, opened his mouth with great effort, and drank the water. The clear water entered his throat, like a sweet spring sprinkled in a dry land, and dry land. Ghostly heaved a sigh of relief. Immediately a wave of tiredness hit him, and again fell asleep. The people beside were shocked. Immediately someone came over to take his pulse. After a while he heaved a sigh of relief, said, "It's not a big deal. His injuries are too serious, and he also has a fever. His physical strength is completely exhausted. Right now his life is not in danger." Once the words were said, the surrounding people seemed to be relieved, and then someone seemed to look at Ghostly, gently sighed. This sleep, not knowing how much time had passed, Ghostly woke up a few times, but after a moment of consciousness, he immediately fell asleep again. In his impression, he only remembered that there was always someone beside him watching over him. Indistinctly, he saw many people, his parents when he was young, the innocent and beautiful senior sister, the unforgettable Baiyao, Lu Sueki, and many, many people, all flashed past before him. Once, he even felt that he saw Tian In Temple Fa Xiong, Fashion Senior and Junior brothers, sitting beside him, chanting sutras to Buddha for him. At that time he smiled bitterly, but even he himself did not know this bitter smile of his, whether his face could show it. Maybe it was after all just a dream. It was as if this upside-down life was like a dream or an illusion. Why chant sutras for me? Chanting, what was the use? In Ghost Lee's moment of consciousness, he quietly thought about it in his mind, and then he fainted again. Dong, 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 dong. As if a deep bell reverberated in the horizon, unhurriedly traveled over, waking him up from his deep nightmare. That deep bell sound, from far to near, slowly, seemed to strike into his heart. For the first time, he did not have the impulse to open his eyes and just quietly laid there, not thinking, not caring. Where was he? What world was outside him? In the great thousand worlds, right now only waves of deep bell sounds were left. Dong, 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 dong. The bell sound was melodious, as if it would never stop, and just kept on striking. He listened attentively, breathing calmly. All his attention was immersed in the gentle sound, unwilling to leave. How long had it been? This was the first time he was lying down without any worries. Who knew? The days of carrying so many burdens, what kind of pain it was. Just that this small world, in the end, also could not last for long. A series of footsteps from far to near, walking towards where he was, disrupted his train of thought. That bell sound, which was striking in his heart, suddenly seemed to be far away from him, in a moment far away at the horizon. Silence. Sighing slowly, he opened his eyes. Buddha. This was the first thing he saw. A huge Buddha word, hanging high on the roof, surrounding this word. A circle of golden patterns encircled it, and then along the periphery, circles of meticulously carved 500 arhats, forming another big circle. The arhats were all of the same size, but their expressions and figures were all different, arranged in rows, incomparably proper. And then, outside the big circle was a blue bottom black edge, suspended ceiling, 2 chi higher than the Buddha word circle in the middle. The style of the painting was also different. It was square squares, each square 1 chi square, with golden edges. Inside were drawings of Qilin, phoenix, golden dragon, goat, etc. Buddhist auspicious beasts. These drawings were the same in every square. Although he was not an expert in carving and architecture, but with one look, Ghostly knew that this was a work of uncanny craftsmanship. On the roof, in this inner circle surrounding the Buddha word, 2 golden chains hung down, with an everlasting lamp hanging upside down. Looking up from below, it was roughly a 3 chi large copper basin, most likely filled with lamp oil. Ghostly frowned, turned his head and looked around. This place looked very much like a meditation room in a temple. The room was rather spacious. The 4 corners were big red painted pillars. The floor was paved with green bricks. The door was made of paulownia wood. On each side there was a window, similarly painted in red, looking very solemn. On one side of the wall, a painting of Guanyin holding a pure water jade bottle. Below it was an incense table. On it were 4 plates of fruits, respectively pears, apples, oranges. In front of the fruits was a copper stove. 3 sticks of thin sandalwood were inserted. Wisps of light smoke were rising, drifting in the air. And on the other side of the wall was where Ghostly was. There was a wooden bed, simple and sturdy, without any other decorations. Most likely monks did not care about these kinds of things. The room was also simple. Other than the mentioned things, there was only a round table in the middle, surrounded by 4 round stools. The table was all black. On the table were teapots and teacups, plain and simple porcelain. And at this moment, the footsteps had already reached the door. The meditation room's door, with a sound, was pushed open from the outside. A person strided in. Ghostly looked at him, couldn't help but was stunned. It was an unfamiliar young monk, his hand holding a wooden tray. On it was a new teapot. He walked in, but did not look at Ghostly. Instead, walked straight to the table in the room, swapped the teapot on the table with the one on the wooden tray. "Who are you?" Ghostly opened his mouth to ask, but he had only said a word, suddenly felt pain in his throat, although it was not as intense as the last time when he was unconscious, but it was still extremely uncomfortable. His voice immediately turned hoarse. Even so, it gave the little monk a fright. Immediately turned around. In his haste, he almost overturned the wooden tray in his hand. You are awake?" The little monk seemed rather surprised, but his eyes were filled with joy, smiled, and said, "Then wait a moment. I will immediately call senior brother and the rest over to see you." Speaking, he was about to run out of the door. Ghostly, towards his back, asked in a hoarse voice, "Little master, may I ask, where is this place?" The little monk turned his head and smiled. His expression innocent and delicate, smiled and said, "Here? Of course this is Tian Yin Temple." Tian Yin Temple. Ghostly was stunned, as if he was struck by lightning. The little monk ran off, most likely to call for the others, leaving Ghostly lying back on the bed, his mind in a mess. Tian Yin Temple. He was bewildered, but for some reason, there was another sense of bitterness, rising from deep in his heart. Tian Yin Temple. Tian Yin Temple. Puji voices were heard indistinctly from afar. At the same time, a few footsteps were walking towards the meditation room. Someone seemed to be quietly asking the little monk something. That little monk was obviously young, innocent and lively, laughing incessantly as he answered. For some reason, listening to those questions and answers, Ghostly for a moment was in a daze, not thinking about his current situation, not thinking about the past grudges. At this moment, he suddenly envied this ordinary little monk for no reason. With his innocent and lively look, perhaps he still did not know that there is also bitterness and hatred in the world. Young and ignorant, but in these many years, is it the happiest days for us? The footsteps stopped abruptly, just outside the door. Someone said to the little monk, "You do not need to go in. Why don't you go to the backyard and inform Abbot Master that Zhang Xiaofan patron is already awake?" The little monk smiled and said, "All right. But Fezan Shi Xiang, you have promised to teach me great Brahmin wisdom. You cannot go back on your words." The person outside the door smiled and said, "Little guy, so greedy, quickly go, I have promised you. Naturally, I will not go back on my words." The little monk was obviously very happy. He chuckled and skipped away. The wooden door opened, and the creaking sound, as if someone paused outside the door, took a deep breath and then walked in. It was indeed Fezan, and behind him, it was still that tall and big monk Fashion. Dressed in white moon monk robe, fair and clean face, holding prayer beads in his hand, Ephasion's appearance seemed to not have changed at all in these 10 years. He slowly walked towards the wooden bed where Ghostly was lying. When he reached the bed, his eyes met with Ghostly's. Both of them did not speak. The atmosphere in the room, for a moment, was a little strange. After a moment, Ephasion's lips revealed a trace of smile, placed his palms together and bowed to Ghostly, said, "Zhang patron, you are awake?" Ghostly's eyes twitched, suddenly coldly said, "My surname is not Zhang. I have long forgotten that name." Ephasion's expression did not change, only looked at Ghostly. After a while, softly said, "Whatever name you use is naturally up to you. Just that, if you don't even want your surname, have you thought about how you are worthy to the parents who gave birth to and raised you?" Ghostly's countenance changed, snorted, but did not say anything, turned his head and did not look at him anymore. Ephasion also did not blame him. Both him and Fashion, when they looked at this evil faction sorcerer who was despised by the world's good faction, their eyes were filled with kindness. Fashion moved 2 chairs from the round table behind him, placed it beside the bed, quietly said, "Senior brother, please take a seat." Ephasion nodded, sat down on the chair, looked at Ghostly, said, "How do you feel now?" Ghostly did not need him to ask. In fact, he had already secretly checked his body. The ribs that were fractured from the serious injury had been completely reconnected. Right now, it was wrapped with thick bandages, obviously to help stabilize it. As for the many external injuries on his shoulders, all of them were also bandaged. Although there was pain coming from the wounds, but indistinctly there was a cooling sensation. Evidently the wounds were covered with excellent medicine to have such an effect. Ephasion saw that he did not reply, but was not angry, smiled and said, "When you were unconscious, I had already helped you to reconnect your broken bones. The other external injuries are not serious, just that your internal organs are heavily injured and must be carefully recuperated before you can fully recover. Luckily, your body is strong, if not even a highly skilled person, with such serious injuries. I'm afraid you will also not be spared." He paused for a while and said, "Just now my little junior brother also told you. This place is Tian Yin Temple. Other than a few people in our temple, no one in the world knows that you are here, so it is very safe. You just have to focus on recuperating here." Ghostly suddenly interrupted his words, looked straight into his eyes and said, "It was you all who saved me." Ephasion's smile froze for a moment. As if hesitating, he turned and looked at Fashion. Fashion lowered his head, softly chanted. Ephasion turned back, no longer hesitating, nodded and said, "Yes." Ghostly snorted, said, Don't tell me you all don't know. If your actions are known by Qingyun's sect, what kind of situation would it be? Fa Xiang indifferently said, Of course I know. Ghostly sneered and said, Since it is so, why did you still go behind your teacher's back to save me, this evil sect sorcerer? Fa Xiang glanced at him. For some reason, his gaze was somewhat strange. Ghostly frowned and said, What are you looking at? Fa Xiang smiled and said, How do you know? I definitely went behind my teacher's back to save you. Ghostly was stunned, said what? Fa Xiang leisurely said, Qingyun's sect at that time, the 7 branches leaders were all extraordinary. Each of them had their own extraordinary points. Return of the Wind Valley leaders in Xuchang was also one of them. That day when I fought with him to hold him back and not expose our sect's skills in a short period of time, this level of skills, I'm sure I am still unable to do it. Ghostly stared at Fa Xiang, stared for a long time. Fa Xiang faced him calmly, his smile unchanging. After a long time, Ghostly suddenly closed his eyes and did not look at Fa Xiang anymore. Fa Xiang nodded and said, You have yet to recover from your serious injuries. You still need more rest. Ghostly closed his eyes, suddenly said, Why did you all save me? Fa Xiang was silent for a moment, indifferently said, This question, I cannot answer you. Ghostly inhaled deeply, said why. Fa Xiang quietly chanted a Buddhist mantra, said, You don't have to be anxious. After a few days when your injuries are better, naturally someone will tell you. Ghostly opened his eyes, frowned, and said, Fa Xiang's lips moved, seemed to hesitate again, but eventually still said, There is no harm in telling you. It is my teacher, Tianyin Temple Abbot Pu Hong Master. Ghostly was stunned for a moment. The next moment, he looked at Fa Xiang's face and knew that he would not be able to get any more information. Simply let out a long sigh, buried his head, and laid down. The melodious bell sound from afar once again faintly traveled over. Dong, 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 dong. Chapter 339. Morning bell, evening drum, day after day, as if it would never end. Every day was exactly the same as the day before. Some felt bored, some felt at ease. The years, whether long or short, were in the human heart. In a blink, Ghostly had already stayed in Tianyin Temple for many days, listening to the morning bell, evening drum, from an unknown place in the temple every day at the same time, quietly passing the days. For some reason, in just a few days, he seemed to have blended into this strange environment. Every day, he was silent, only in a daze. He was currently in the prime of his life. His body was in excellent condition. Although his injuries were serious, but firstly, his body was young. Secondly, his cultivation was high, and in addition, Tianyin Temple was unexpectedly generous to him. Whatever good medicine they had, they were not stingy and used it all on him. With Tianyin Temple's reputation, the good medicine in the temple, naturally in the world, it would also be the best medicine. The medicine quickly took effect. His injuries actually recovered extremely quickly. Just that after a few days, he was already able to get off the bed and walk. Just that when he walked, his chest was still in severe pain. After a few steps, he would be panting. But even so, Fa Xiang and the rest who came to visit him were overjoyed, exclaiming that they had never seen someone who could recover so quickly. Seemed like in less than a month, he would be completely recovered. Ghostly usually interacted with them indifferently, occasionally conversed. Both parties avoided talking about their opposing identities. It seemed like right now, in the eyes of Fa Xiang and Tianyin Temple monks, Ghostly was just an ordinary person whom they kindly saved, and not the evil sect sorcerer whom they were willing to risk the world's condemnation and forcibly snatch from Qingyun's sect. And Ghostly also did not ask why did the Tianyin Temple monks wanted to save him. The days passed by leisurely. Ghostly's body was getting better day by day. These few days, he could already walk more easily. Sometimes when the morning bell and evening drum sounded, he would pull a chair to open the window, sit by the window and listen. It seemed like this Tianyin Temple bell and drum sounds, to him, had a different kind of charm. In this period of time, when he was recuperating, only Fa Xiang and Fashion often came to visit him. The other monks almost did not come over, not to mention Pu Hong Master and the rest of the Pu generation divine monks. Because he was recuperating, Ghostly had never left the room, other than occasionally opening the window to look outside. What appeared in front of him was only a small courtyard with red walls and green tiles, and a few short trees planted in the courtyard. Just that to Ghostly, this ordinary and simple little courtyard had a long-lost familiar feeling from the day he opened the window. Although he did not show it, but in his heart, he immediately fell in love with this place. Listening to the morning bell in the morning and the evening drum in the evening, such a peaceful and leisurely life had only been a short period of time, yet had already caused him to be unable to part with it, and he was extremely intoxicated. Who knew that in his heart, his greatest wish was nothing more than to live a peaceful life like this Tim Ti Meru, Tianyin temple, in that vast and majestic temple, in that strange and remote corner of a small courtyard. Just like that, living creek. The wooden door was pushed open. Ephaesiong walked in alone, swept a glance around the room, and then landed on Ghostly, who was lying on the bed. Ghostly's eyes were closed, not knowing if he was asleep or not. Ephaesiong smiled, turned and closed the door, spoke to Ghostly. "How do you feel today? Does your chest still hurt?" Ghostly's body moved, slowly opened his eyes, glanced at Ephaesiong, faintly said, "Every time you come you always ask this question. Don't you feel annoyed?" Ephaesiong smiled and shook his head. His eyes turned and walked to the other side of the wall, in front of the Guanyin statue. He picked up 3 sticks of sandalwood incense from the offering table, lit a thin candle by the side, and then inserted it into the copper incense burner. Light smoke rose in spirals, drifted into the air. That Guanyin statue suddenly became somewhat misty. The air also started to be filled with the smell of sandalwood. Ephaesiong put his palms together, kowtowed 3 times to the Guanyin statue, and then turned around, looked at Ghostly for a long while, suddenly said, "Aren't you coming over to pay your respects?" Ghostly was surprised, involuntarily looked towards that portrait. The Guanyin statue in the portrait had a benevolent face, dignified and beautiful, a pair of intelligent eyes, slender and long, looking ahead, as if looking at all the mortals in the world. Right now, she seemed to be benevolently looking at himself. His heart was moved, but then he sneered and said, "Why should I pay my respects to her? If she really has a spirit, I don't know how many times I've prayed to heaven and the various deities and Buddhas, but I have never seen them show any mercy." Ephaesiong looked at him for a long time. Ghostly looked back calmly, a cold smile still hanging on his lips, not showing any signs of remorse. After a long while, Ephaesiong heaved a long sigh, turned around and bowed his head to the Guanyin statue. His mouth softly muttered something, not knowing what he was saying. Ghostly watched him from behind, sneered incessantly. After paying his respects, Ephaesiong turned around. The benevolent look on his face gradually faded, changed into a peaceful smile, said, "I see that you look good today and your body has more or less recovered. Why don't we go out?" Ghostly was surprised, said, "Go out? Where to?" Ephaesiong smiled and said, "Go to the place you want to go, see the person you want to see." Ghostly frowned and then raised his brows, said, "Why, don't tell me it is Puhong Master he—" Ephaesiong nodded and said, "Exactly. Teacher heard that you have recovered and was very happy. Let me come over today to take a look. If you're not tired, we can meet. What do you think?" Ghostly stared at Ephaesiong for a long time, suddenly smiled and said, "Good, good, good. I have waited for this day for a long time. Naturally, I want to see him. Not to mention my body recovered, even if I was seriously injured that day, as long as he is willing, even if I have to crawl to see him." Ephaesiong put his palms together, said, "Patron is too serious. Please follow me." After speaking, he led the way, walked to the door first, opened it, and walked out. Ghostly followed behind, but when he was about to walk out of the room, for some reason, he suddenly turned back and looked at that Guanyin statue on the wall. In the light smoke curling up, Guanyin's benevolent countenance, with a slight smile, seemed to be staring at him. Ghostly frowned, snorted, and immediately turned around. Without looking back, walked straight away, leaving only the sandalwood fragrance, gently drifting in the empty room behind him. Walking out of the courtyard, it was a tunnel about 2 zhang long, for chi wide. Both sides were red walls, about 2 people's height. The roof was also covered with green glazed tiles. At the end of the tunnel was a circular arch door. When he neared that arch door, indistinctly a sound was heard from outside. That sound was rather strange. At first it seemed to be the sound of monks chanting scriptures in the temple, but among it, there were other strange sounds mixed in, some which Ghostly imagined should not appear here, like the village women gathered together chatting, or the devotees loudly praying to Buddha. Indistinctly there were sounds of children crying. These kinds of strange sounds, how could it appear in Tian-in Temple, one of the three great sects of the world's good faction? Ghostly was bewildered, looked at Ephaesiong, but Ephaesiong's expression did not change. Leading the way in front of him, walked out of the arched door. Ghostly frowned, composed himself, and also walked out. Outside the door, it suddenly became wide and spacious, white jade as the stone, flat ground as the field, stone steps stacked up, 9 in one group. Connecting to the great strength hall, there were actually 9 by 981 groups. And between the jade railings, the hall stood majestically, extremely tall. In front of the hall, 13 enormous stone pillars shot up to the sky. More than 10 zhang tall, the golden walls of the hall splendid, 8 roof ridges divided equally, carved in the shape of a dragon's head. In front of each roof ridge cornice, 10 auspicious beasts were carved, different shapes, vivid and lifelike. Note 1, and the hall's various carvings were gorgeous and exquisite, far beyond the common people's imagination, not something an ordinary person could make. Behind the great strength hall, there were towering halls on both sides and in front. Some of them were connected to the plaza, some were connected by winding paths, and some were directly connected to each other. Layer upon layer, it was a magnificent sight. Just that although the buildings were magnificent, and indeed made one exclaim in admiration, but at this moment, what made Ghostly most shocked was not these, but on this Buddhism's solemn sacred place. Right now, there were innumerable mortals shuttling back and forth, holding incense sticks in their hands, kneeling and praying to Buddha. The steps in public square, inside and outside the hall. The incense sticks were unimaginably flourishing. Such a huge Tian-in temple. Tian-in temple, which held a high position in the world's good faction, was like an ordinary mortal temple, open to innumerable mortals to burn incense and pray to Buddha. Ghostly had never thought of this. The strange sounds, just now he understood, but everything in front of him. He was even more confused. Growing up on Xingyun Hill, he was long used to the so-called celestial demeanor, celestial mountain, celestial realm. It was something only cultivators could have. On Xingyun Hill, when had he ever seen an ordinary commoner coming up to burn incense and pray? Chapter 340. He turned to look at Ephaesiong, asked in astonishment. This, Ephaesiong smiled and said, "Today is the first day of the lunar month, so there are more people. Although our temple is full of incense, but usually there are not so many people, just that every 1st and 15th day of the lunar month, the commoners within a radius of several hundred miles have the custom of coming over to worship Buddha." Ghostly shook his head, hesitated for a moment, eventually still asked, "No, I just find it strange. Why would you let the commoners come in to burn incense and worship Buddha?" Ephaesiong seemed to have expected Ghostly to ask this question, nodded his head, made a this-way gesture, and then led Ghostly towards the back of the great strength hall. While walking, he said, "Actually, previously, Tian'in Temple was the same as Qingyun's sect and the other influential families, not open to the secular world. Just that after my teacher Puhong Master took over as abbot, with the other 3 teacher uncles comprehended Buddhism, made a great wish, said, 'Buddha is the Buddha of all living beings, not just me alone.' So we decided to open the mountain gates to accept the commoners." Speaking till here, Ephaesiong stopped, turned, and pointed to the numerous steps leading to the great strength hall, said, "Do you see that long stone steps?" Ghostly nodded, said, "Why?" Ephaesiong placed his palms together and said, "That was when a teacher uncle saw that the mountain path was steep. Although the commoners had the heart to worship Buddha, but many of them were physically weak and unable to move, unable to go up the mountain to fulfill their wishes. So he used his great powers, with one person's strength, spent 10 years of effort, on the originally steep mountain path, forcefully opened up this Buddha path, did such a meritorious deed." Ghostly couldn't help but feel deep veneration. His face also turned solemn, said, "There is actually such an incredible senior. May I ask his name?" Ephaesiong glanced at him, unexpectedly after a moment of silence, quietly said, That teacher uncle's name is Puji, has already passed away for more than 10 years. Ghostly's body abruptly stiffened, like, Puji, these two words like a sudden clap of thunder on a clear day, struck in his mind, directly shaking his mind. Fa Xiang looked at Ghost Li's fluctuating expression, suddenly sorrowful, suddenly resentful, heaved a long sigh, quietly said, "Forget it. Let's go. Abbott is still waiting for us." Ghostly woodenly followed Fa Xiang over, just that his originally relaxed steps, right now, had become extremely heavy. After walking a few feet, he suddenly looked back with a complicated expression. In the distance, there was a bustling crowd. Countless people were walking on the stone steps. Old people, men, women, children, all of them had pious expressions on their faces as they walked on the stone steps, chanting the name of Buddha. It was as if walking on this path would bring them closer to Buddha. Ghostly's expression was complicated, his hands clenched into fists and then slowly released. After a long time, eventually he slowly turned his head and walked forward. Fa Xiang, who was waiting in front of them, put his palms together and chanted. He did not say anything. The two of them left together, leaving the countless believers and the silent Buddhist path behind, leaving them in the human world. This place used to be the human world. It was no longer the land of immortals and Buddhas. After walking past the Great Strength Hall, there was still a long string of halls and temples behind. Tian'an Temple was, after all, a famous large sect. Its grandeur was not something a normal temple could compare to. Just that Fa Xiang led Ghostly all the way to the back, did not stop at any of the halls and pavilions, only walked toward the back of the mountain. Ghostly followed behind Fa Xiang all the way, did not speak a word. His face was filled with thoughts. He turned a blind eye to those magnificent and exquisite buildings around him. Just that in the end, Fa Xiang led him out of Tian'an Temple's back door, onto a small mountain path towards Mount Meru Peak. Ghostly frowned and said, "Why, Puhong Master, he is not in the temple." Fa Xiang nodded his head, said, "That's right, although our temple is open to the secular world. It is an act of boundless merit, but as a monk, after all, needs peace and quiet. Teacher and the few teacher uncles are people who like peace and quiet, and have always stayed in the small temple at the top of the mountain. We usually call it Little Tian'an Temple." After speaking, he smiled, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Ghostly silently nodded, did not speak, followed Fa Xiang towards Mount Meru Peak. Although Mount Meru Peak could not be compared to Qing Yun Sect Tongtian Peak, which towered into the clouds, but it was definitely not low. The Tian'an Temple that they came out from was already halfway up the mountain, but this time they headed up. It took them an entire hour before they saw Little Tian'an Temple signboard. Looking from the outside, Little Tian'an Temple was indeed called a small one. It was only 3 entrances in and out of the courtyard. A far cry from that majestic Tian'an Temple halfway up the mountain, but this place was far from the secular world. The surroundings were filled with green pines and tall bamboos, densely packed into a forest. The mountain breeze blew past, the loose bamboos swayed. An indescribable tranquility and elegance, compared to the bustle at the foot of the mountain. It was another kind of feeling. Ghostly had just recovered from his serious injuries. After walking for such a long distance, his forehead was already sweating. He stopped to rest for the moment, turned back and looked. The incense in Tian'an Temple halfway up the mountain was flourishing, threads of incense wafting up. Even at such a distance, he could see it clearly, indistinctly human voices, an indescribable pious solemnity. Ghostly stared for a long time, lost in thought, not knowing what he was thinking. After a long time he turned around. Fa Xiang nodded, brought him into Little Tian'an Temple. This place was much simpler than the foot of the mountain. Both of them passed through the temple hall in the middle, turned right twice, walked into the rear hall. There were 3 quiet meditation rooms. Fa Xiang walked forward, headed to the door of the meditation room in the middle, loudly said, "Master, Zhang Xiaofan patron has arrived." An old but amiable voice immediately sounded in the meditation room, said, "Please come in." Fa Xiang turned back, made an inviting gesture to Ghostly. Ghostly hesitated for a moment, then walked into that room. Fa Xiang instead stopped outside. Seemed like he did not have the intention to go in. Entering the meditation room, Ghostly looked around. This meditation room was simple and unadorned. All the furnishings were almost exactly the same as the meditation room, where he was recuperating at the foot of the mountain. And the current world's good faction giant, Tian In Temple Abbot Puhong Master, was sitting cross-legged on the meditation bed, his hand holding a string of prayer beads, looking at him with a smile. "You are here." Puhong Master's voice was calm. He smiled and said, for some reason, facing this holy monk, Ghostly's originally restless heart very quickly calmed down, took a deep breath, he nodded and said, "Yes." Puhong Master carefully assessed him, from top to bottom. His eyes glimmered with a strange kind of benevolence and light. The prayer beads in his hand also gently turned, after a long time said, "You should have something to ask me, right?" Ghostly immediately nodded, said, "That's right, I am very curious. Why did Tian'in Temple risk falling out with Qing Yin sect to save me? And why did you all—" His words were hurried, his voice extremely fast, but halfway through, he involuntarily stopped. Puhong Master's right hand stopped in midair, preventing him from continuing. Ghostly did not understand, looked bewilderedly at Puhong Master. Puhong Master lowered his head enchanted, got down from the meditation bed, stood up, and said to Ghostly, "Before you ask me, let me bring you to meet someone first." Ghostly was surprised, said, "Meet someone, who is it?" Puhong did not answer, only walked out. His mouth unhurriedly said, "This person has wanted to meet you for a long time, and I know you must also want to meet him." Ghostly was stunned but subconsciously followed. For some reason, his palms were sweating, his heartbeat suddenly sped up, as if in front there was an existence that made him fearful. Fa Xiang had been quietly standing outside the meditation room. Seeing Puhong Master bringing Ghostly out so quickly, his expression did not change, only took a step back and stood aside. Puhong Master glanced at him, nodded his head, did not speak, and brought Ghostly to another direction. That was the last small courtyard in the 3 courtyards, leaning against a mountain wall. Note 1. Carvings of auspicious beasts on the eaves of the hall. It was a unique architectural regulation in China's ancient times. There were extremely detailed regulations on the number, from the emperor to the officials to the ordinary families. There were detailed regulations and could not be exceeded, otherwise it would be a crime of disrespect, enough to kill the entire family. A building with 10 auspicious beasts on the roof. Since ancient times, there was only one such building in the entire China. It was the Forbidden City Supreme Harmony Hall, the only one in the world. This place is fictitious. All readers can just laugh and watch. Note 2. Burning incense and praying to Buddha. In China, where Buddhism was widely spread, it was very popular, or called Buddhist ceremony, or called Buddhist assembly. From Beijing's Yonghe Palace to the small temples in the southern Fujian villages, it was mostly like this. Watching his grandmother burn incense since young, until now it was still the same. When he started to write, he couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 341. The plain small courtyard was the same as the courtyard outside. A simple house leaning against the mountain wall, a small path in the middle paved with green bricks. Leading to the door, both sides were underbrush. It looked like no one was taking care of it seriously. Many places were already overgrown with weeds. What was different from the meditation room outside? On the door of this house, there was a rather heavy black curtain, and other than this door, there did not seem to be any other windows or other exits in the house. Ghostly looked at this ordinary little house, a thirst in his throat, his hands involuntarily clenched tightly. He looked at Puhong Master. On Puhong Master's face also had a very complicated expression, like regret, like pain, indescribable, and he was also the same, staring at that small door in a daze. For a moment, no one spoke in the silence, only the weeds beside. From an unknown place, low sounds of insects were heard, not knowing what they were calling for. After a long time, Puhong Master softly sighed, said, "Let's go in." Ghostly's face twitched, quietly said, "All right." Puhong Master unhurriedly walked forward, stretched his hand to pull the curtain. With a creak, pushed open the door. The faint sound came from the door, not knowing how long it had been since someone pushed open this door, heavy and desolate. A gust of cold air suddenly rushed out from the house, even though Ghostly was still standing outside. But being hit by this gust of cold air, even with his level of cultivation, he still could not help but shivered. In this small house, it seemed to be the coldest place in the world. Ghostly frowned, hesitated, and at this moment, Puhong Master's voice was heard from behind the curtain. "Young patron, come in." Ghostly took a deep breath, shook his head, stretched his hand to pull open the curtain, strided in. The curtain slowly fell. The door once again emitted a desolate creak, gently closed. The small courtyard once again regained its tranquility. Xiang's figure slowly walked over, looked at that plain and unadorned little house, softly chanted and bowed, his face solemn and solemn. The curtain was lowered, the wooden door closed. Because there were no windows, the house immediately became dark. A bone-piercing chill instantly surged from all directions, as if countless ice-cold steel needles were about to pierce into his skin. Ghostly had just recovered from his illness. For a moment he shivered again, but he was after all not an ordinary person. With a few movements of the true way in his body, he slowly got used to it. Although the chill was unable to enter his body, the bone-piercing coldness was still extremely uncomfortable. This little hut on Mount Meru actually seemed even colder than the bitter cold of the extreme north ice fields. Ghostly was shocked. When he was bewildered, Puhong Master quietly sighed, said, "Junior brother, we are here to see you. This person you have wanted to meet for a long time." His voice was low and filled with a strange emotion. The chill in the room suddenly became even colder, almost enough to freeze a person's blood. Then, a strand of faint light, white with a faint silver light, slowly appeared in front of Puhong Master and Ghostly, at the end of the hut, lit up. That light was graceful and like snow. First a strand blossomed, and then at the edge of the light, another strand of silver-white light slowly lit up, but it got closer to it, merged into one. Following that, other strands of light lit up one after another. Gradually, it could be seen, it was about 1 chi square disc shape. That light was gentle, pure, white like snow. The light did not rise more than 1 chi high. The ends seemed to have turned into specks of snowflakes, like white fireflies, gently dancing, slowly falling, almost like a dream. Following which, those strands of light slowly merged, gradually brightened. Ghostly and Puhong Master heard a sudden light whistle in the house, the clear sound pleasing to the ear. That white light flourished, instantly emitted brilliance, illuminating the entire house. In that instant, Puhong Master lowered his head and chanted, while Ghostly, in that instant, felt his entire body's blood froze, could no longer feel any warmth. Even he could not feel his own heartbeat, seemed to have stopped in that instant. He just stood there like a stiff icicle, staring blankly at the depths of that light. There was no other thought in his mind. Only 2 words reverberated in his mind. Puji. The faint light like snow, resplendent and flowing, emitted from a pure white jade-like disc, at the same time emitting an eerie chill. And on that 1 chi square disc, a person was sitting cross-legged. It was the person who changed Zhang Xiaofan's fate, engraved in Ghostly's bones and heart today, Puji. Looking from afar, Puji's face was lifelike, although his skin looked extremely pale, without a trace of vitality, but looking carefully, there were no signs of withering. Even to the extent that he was still that compassionate and amiable old monk in Zhang Xiaofan's memory. There was not the slightest change, just that in his expression, there was an additional trace of faint pain. Other than his body, Puji's body, for some reason, had shrunk to half of its original size, and because of that, he could sit cross-legged on that pure white jade plate. Most likely the reason why the chilly air in this room was so strong, but there were no piles of ice. Most likely it was because of this treasure. And of course, Puji's body could be preserved for such a long time. Most likely it was because of this treasure. Just that, Ghostly's mind could no longer think so much. That compassionate and amiable monk sitting on the jade plate was clearly deeply engraved in his heart. For more than 10 years, he did not forget it. Was it hate? Was it envy? His mind was sometimes empty, sometimes like a violent storm. Thunder and lightning roared. Thousands of pain, thousands of gratitude and grudges, for a moment all surfaced in his heart. That benevolent monk was the one who saved his life. He was the one who taught him the true Dharma and treated him like a son. But it was also this seemingly benevolent monk who ruined his life, causing him to suffer day and night, as if he had fallen into the abyss of hell. Gratitude and grudges intertwined. He thought it was only in his heart. Unexpectedly today, he saw his face again. Ghostly, in his agitation, could not stand properly. His head dizzy, his body fell to the side. And at this moment, a gentle and warm hand stretched out from the side, supported him, at the same time a familiar aura. It was the Buddhism true skill great Brahmin wisdom, emitted from that palm, incomparably thick, calmed down the surging blood in Ghostly's heart. Amit Ba, young patron, don't be too agitated, take care of your body. Puhong Master's calm voice was heard softly from his side. Ghostly, like being startled awake from a dream, clenched his teeth, breathed deeply, let go of Puhong's hand, again stood up straight. However, his eyes had never left Puji's face. In the dim light, on Puji's peaceful face, that trace of agony seemed to be even more profound. Puhong Master at the side carefully scrutinized Ghostly. In his eyes, this young man's painful and ever-changing face was changing in the dim light. Right now, Ghostly was no longer that evil sex sorcerer whose name shook the world, and was only a mortal suffering in his eyes, like that young man many years ago. He softly sighed, his eyes heavy, turned and looked at Puji, unhurriedly walked up, staring at Puji's face, quietly said, "Junior brother, your last wish before you died. As your senior brother, I have already helped you to accomplish it. Senior brother is useless, unable to save you at that time. Evil karma begets evil. One has to taste the debt. This is what you said yourself at that time. Hope that you will soon let go of your sins and reincarnate." Amit Ba. He put his palms together, facing Puji's body, bowed, and then walked straight out. The moment he was about to step out, he faintly said, "Young patron, I think you also want to be alone with Puji Junior brother for a while, right? I am in the meditation room in front. If you have any matters, just come and look for me." Ghostly did not speak, as if he did not hear. Right now in his eyes, there was only Puji monk in the dim light. Puhong Master sighed, opened the door, lifted the curtains, and walked out. In the room, silence. Ghostly slowly moved his feet, little by little walked towards Puji. Chapter 342. He seemed to be afraid of something, at a loss of what to do. He obviously hated him so much, but for what reason? Right now, infinite sorrow surged out from his heart. That person quietly sat there, not the slightest anger, but seemed to be waiting for something. Even on his pained face, there seemed to be longing and anticipation. Ghostly slowly walked to him, stared at Puji, his hands slowly clenched, nails deeply sinking into his palms, but in the end he still loosened them. He seemed to have lost his support, powerless, just like that, quietly fell to the ground, sat in front of Puji, without a word. The faint light flickered, shone on Puji and him, the two figures. Time, in this room, stopped, sometimes flowed backwards, sometimes jumped, but in the end what kind of souls did not change? Even though one was still beating, the other was already silent. Dong, 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 dong. The morning bell rang once again, reverberating in every corner of Mount Meru. The sound was melodious, waking people up from their dreams, but also had a feeling that it could take people away from the mundane world. Mount Meru, Little Tian Temple, outside the quiet meditation room, a knocking sound was heard. Puhong Master raised his brows and then shook his head slightly, sighed and said, "Is it Fa Xiang? Come in." Fa Xiang answered and entered, walked over and bowed to Puhong Master. Looking at his face, there seemed to be a trace of worry, said, "Teacher, it has already been a day and night. Zhang Patron still has not come out." Puhong Master shook his head, said, "A lifetime of bad karma, a lifetime of love and hatred. How can it be so easy to let it go? Let it go." Fa Xiang put his palms together, quietly said, "Yes," and then frowned, spoke to Puhong Master, "Teacher, I am worried that there is Jade ice dish in the small room. Although it can protect Puji teacher uncle's body, but the extreme cold energy is extremely harmful to normal people. And Zhang Patron has just recovered from his serious injuries and his mind is in a mess. The pain is unbearable, if there is any. Lingering illness. How can we be worthy of Puji teacher uncle's last words?" Puhong Master indifferently said, "No matter. Yesterday, I have already used the great Brahmin wisdom to protect his heart arteries and veins, in addition to his own cultivation. Although the cold air is poisonous, but it should be fine. Fa Xiong then heaved a sigh of relief, put his palms together, and said, I see. Disciple is also relieved. Puhong Master nodded, at the same time glanced at Fa Xiong, said, I see you are very concerned about this Zhang patron. Although there is your Puji teacher uncle's last words, but to you, you also seem to see him in a different light. Fa Xiong smiled and said, Master has a discerning eye. It is indeed so. As he spoke, he seemed to recall the past and sighed. I won't hide it from Master. 10 years have passed since I first met Benefactor Zhang. In the past 10 years, your disciples' Buddhist studies and cultivation have made small progress. But in this life, it is like a baby walking on the road. There is almost no change. Only this Benefactor Zhang, observing his life, he has experienced perilous waves and perilous waves, great sorrow and great suffering, gratitude and grudges, love and hatred, all kinds of pain mentioned by Buddha. He has actually tasted them all. Puhong Master was slightly moved, put his palms together, and softly chanted the name of Buddha. Fa Xiong continued, Disciple had once when I was unable to sleep at night. Thought of this Benefactor Zhang, had once used his body as a substitute. Imagine all these kinds of pain happening to Disciple. Unfortunately, Disciple's Buddhist studies are not deep enough. Fear rose in me. Buddha said the flesh and skin, in the end it is only dust. Only this way of the heart. The important thing is to understand. Every time I think of this, I would think of Benefactor Zhang's rough life. Now that you are still able to hold on, Disciple really admires you. Speaking till here, Fa Xiong's expression suddenly changed, knelt down before Puhong Master. Puhong Master was surprised, said, Why are you doing this? Fa Xiong quietly said, Master above, Disciple's cultivation is shallow, and my understanding of Buddhism is not deep. Yet facing a character like Benefactor Zhang, I really cannot bear to suffer from his inner demons. May Benefactor Teacher use your great power. Use our Buddha's boundless power to enlighten and guide him. Use Buddhism's compassion to dissolve his vicious tendencies. Help him to escape from the inner demons and bitterness. This is also a matter of great merit and virtue, the heaven's benevolence. I can also comfort Puji teacher uncle who passed away. Master is merciful. After speaking, his hands prostrated on the ground, continuously bowed 3 times. Puhong Master shook his head and sighed, said, Foolish child, knowing your words, it instead aroused the precepts of anger. Furthermore, it is not that teacher does not wish to enlighten this person, but because he has experienced many difficulties, his life full of ups and downs. Until today, his will is already as firm as a rock. Not ordinary people can sway his heart. As the saying goes, Buddha is in the human heart. All living beings have fate with Buddha. In the future, he will sink into the sea of bitterness, or turn back to paradise. It is all in his heart. We have no power to exert on him. Fa Xiong slowly stood up, lowered his head, and put his palms together. Disappointment could not help but on his face. He still quietly said, Yes, Disciple understands. Puhong pondered for a moment, said, You better go to the small house at the back to take a look at him. Although the cold air in the house should be fine, but with his current condition, not eating or drinking for a day, it is not a good thing. Fa Xiong replied, composed himself, and walked out of the house. When he was about to open the door, suddenly saw a person standing outside. The sunlight shone in from behind. That person's face was covered in shadows. For the moment, he could not see the face clearly. Fa Xiong was shocked, stepped back, and then saw clearly that it was ghostly, not knowing when he had arrived at the door, quietly standing there. One day and one night, Ghostly did not look tired, but his face had turned extremely pale, his eyes bloodshot. Most likely he had not slept for the entire night. When he saw it was Fa Xiong, Ghostly's lips moved, slowly nodded to Fa Xiong. Fa Xiong was stunned for a moment, put his palms together, and returned the greeting. Ghostly then slowly walked in, stood opposite Puhong Master. Puhong Master was still the same as yesterday, sitting cross-legged on the meditation bed, his hands holding the prayer beads, constantly turning. Seeing Ghostly hesitating to speak, he did not find it strange, faintly said to Fa Xiong, Bring a chair for the young patron. You also sit down. Fa Xiong acknowledged, pulled a chair over for Ghostly to sit. Himself also sat at the side. Puhong Master was silent for a moment, said, "If you have anything to ask me now, just go ahead and ask." Ghostly's eyes seemed to be wandering, as if his state of mind had not calmed down yet. After a long while, he was heard quietly saying, "Why did your Tianyin temple want to save me?" Puhong Master put his palms together and said, "Everything has a cause and effect. Patron's bumpy situation today is mostly because of Tianyin Temple Puji Jr. Brothers' evil karma. Since it is so, Tianyin Temple cannot leave you in the lurch." Ghostly snorted, said, "Doing this, aren't you afraid Qinyin's sect will fall out with you?" Puhong Master smiled and said, "I am afraid." Ghostly heard him being so straightforward, was shocked, said, "Then you all still—" Puhong Master shook his head and said, "Tianyin Temple and Qinyun sect have been on good terms for generations. Generations of ancestors have instructed not to destroy at will. That's why I ordered them to wrap themselves in black, to snatch you back without leaving a trace." Ghostly sneered and said, "Qinyun sect's experts are as numerous as the clouds. What if your tracks are exposed?" Puhong Master indifferently said, "I ordered them to hide their tracks, is in consideration of the harmony between the two sects. Do not wish for the two good faction sects to be at odds, so I did this. But if there really is an accident, then it's nothing. To save Patron you, we might have to fall out." Ghostly stared at Puhong Master, in a deep voice said, "What exactly is it for? To save me at all costs?" Puhong Master this time kept quiet. Ghostly did not pursue, only stared at him. After a long time, Puhong Master heaved a long sigh and said, "Do you want to know when Puji Jr. Brother was dying after struggling to return to Tianyin Temple until he passed away?" Ghostly's body shook. For a moment he could not speak, looking at the pain in his eyes, as if his heart was in a perilous situation again. Finally, he quietly said, "Yes." For some reason, his voice sounded hoarse. Chapter 343. That was something that happened more than 10 years ago, but in my mind, it seemed to be the same as what happened yesterday. So clear and clear, I have not forgotten a bit. Puhong Master's voice calmly and slowly drifted in the house. He started to narrate the past. I remember very clearly, it was a cloudy day, gloomy. That day, since morning, I felt a little restless, but I couldn't tell what was wrong. I couldn't help but be distracted from my usual homework. This situation was very rare. I myself also did not know why, so my mood was not very good. Just like that, until evening, I heard the evening drum sounded. The sky was gradually turning dark. I then felt better. At that time, I just felt that most likely my cultivation was not enough and was distracted for a moment. Unexpectedly, when the sky was about to turn dark, suddenly, I heard a sharp cry from Tianyin Temple's door. Speaking till here, Puhong Master turned his head and looked at Fa Xiang. Fa Xiang nodded and said, "Yes, at that time disciple was patrolling the mountain. Suddenly I saw someone fainted on the ground, not far from the temple. Disciple quickly went over to check. Unexpectedly, it was Puji teacher uncle." He sighed and said, "Puji teacher uncle was unconscious, his face extremely haggard. Only his cheeks, for some reason, had a strange red color. Until later I then found out it was because Puji teacher uncle, in order to temporarily prolong his life, took the rare medicine 3 days must-die pill." Ghostly was stunned for a moment. This pill's name was really unheard of, could not help but ask, "What 3 days must-die pill?" Puhong Master said, "This medicine is not used in the right way. It was said that in the past to the evil sect, a strange person called Ghost Doctor concocted it out of his wildest imagination. I heard that as long as you take this pill, even if you have a dying injury, this medicine can also stimulate your body's potential, let you live for 3 more days, and in these 3 days, you can barely maintain a normal person's physical strength. However, once 3 days had passed, the medicine would turn into the world's #1 poison. Even if one's body was in good condition and had a high cultivation base, he would not be able to fight against the strange medicinal properties of the strange medicine and would die without a doubt. That's why it was given such a strange name." Ghostly was silent. Puhong Master continued, "At that time, naturally, we did not know so much. Just that after I received Fa Xiang disciple's urgent report, I turned pale with fright. Puji Jr. Brother is gifted and intelligent. His skills are profound. He has always been an outstanding figure in our Tianyin Temple. I did not expect that he would become like this. At that time, I immediately ordered people to carry him in and treat him in the meditation room. However, he remained unconscious, and the qi in his body was scattered. Not only was he poisoned, his body was also seriously injured by someone with extremely high cultivation. He had actually reached the point where he was like a lamp that ran out of oil. Puhong Master spoke until here, although it had been more than 10 years, but his face still revealed a sorrowful expression. Clearly the events that happened that year dealt a huge blow to him. That night, I tried my best to save Puji Jr. brother, but no matter how I used up all the elixirs, exhausted my true essence, I could not wake Puji Jr. brother up. Seeing his breath getting weaker and weaker, my heart was in agony. Don't tell me this junior brother of mine actually died without knowing the reason? His body was so heavily injured. Even if he died a few days earlier, it would not be surprising. Just that he forced himself to return to Tianyin Temple. Naturally, before he died, he had something to say to us, or maybe there was something important that he had to account to us. Puhong Master spoke until here, heaved a long sigh, became silent, as if in his mind, that period of time again surfaced. After a long while, Ephasion coughed softly said, "Teacher, I had always been with you and Puji teacher uncle. Why don't I narrate on behalf of you and Puji teacher uncle?" Puhong Master silently nodded, did not speak. Ephasion coughed once and continued, "I had always been with teacher, watched teacher, and Pufong teacher uncle, and the rest tried their best to save Puji teacher uncle, but it was all to no avail. I was also burning with anxiety. Puji teacher uncle treated me extremely well in the past, only hated that my skills were shallow and unable to do anything for him. Unexpectedly, just when teacher uncle and I were at our wits' end, that night, Puji teacher uncle actually woke up on his own. Ghostly raised his eyebrows, softly made a low cry, and then he quickly controlled himself. His face again turned cold. Ephasion glanced at him, continued, "It was me who was on night duty to protect Puji teacher uncle. In my great surprise and joy, I immediately called teacher and Pufong teacher uncle over. Although it had already been more than 10 years, but I still remember Puji teacher uncle's face that night. His face was lifeless and dispirited, but only his cheeks were crimson red like it was about to drip blood. It was really terrifying. Seeing Puji teacher uncle suddenly getting better, teacher and we were all very happy. Although Puji teacher uncle's expression was strange, but for the moment we could not care so much. At that time, teacher was about to ask Puji teacher uncle what exactly happened. How did he get injured to such an extent? Unexpectedly, Puji teacher uncle once saw teacher. Ephasion paused for a moment, actually trying to compose himself. At this moment, the room was silent. Puhong Master closed his eyes, softly chanted, the prayer beads in his hands rotated lightly. Ghostly instead concentrated and listened carefully. Ephasion, for some reason, his expression turned ugly, but eventually still continued. After Puji teacher uncle woke up, he had been rather quiet. Unexpectedly, when teacher heard the news and rushed over. The moment he saw teacher, suddenly, as if he was agitated by something, his entire body started to tremble. He actually leapt up from the bed and sat up. Me, teacher, and Pufong teacher uncle were all shocked. Puji teacher uncle's face was as red as blood, a pair of eyes staring intently at teacher, stretched out his withered hand, pointing at teacher. Teacher immediately walked over, held Puji teacher uncle's hand, was about to ask, Puji teacher uncle actually. A trace of hesitation flashed past Ephasion's face, glanced at Puhong Master. Puhong Master's expression did not change, still with his eyes closed and palms clasped together. Ephasion pondered for a moment, continued. Puji teacher uncle once held teacher's hand. Suddenly, he seemed to have completely collapsed, like a child, leaned on teacher, and started wailing loudly. What? Ghostly heard until here, for a moment forgot his emotions, stood up in shock, stared at Ephasion. In his heart, that Puji divine monk, no matter what he had done, the impression he left, would he be such a person? Ephasion sighed, said, at that time the three of us were also stunned, at a loss, did not know what exactly happened to Puji teacher uncle. Why would he behave so strangely? But looking at Pooji teacher uncle, he looked extremely remorseful, in so much pain that he wished he was dead. We also did not know what to do. At that time, we only remember Pooji teacher uncle crying bitterly. Said to teacher, senior brother, junior brother deserves to die. Committed a heinous sin. Even if I die 10,000 times, it will not be able to make up for 10,000th of it. The corner of Ghost Lee's eyes twitched fiercely, but he did not say a word. Fa Xiang's voice was deep, unhurriedly said. At that time, the shock in my heart was really at its maximum, and looking at teacher uncle's expression, obviously he also had the same thoughts. Just that the situation at that time, Pooji teacher uncle's demeanor was crazy, almost to the point of insanity. We had no choice but to persuade him with kind words, hoping that he would have a good rest first, if there were anything we could talk about it after his injuries were healed. But Pooji teacher uncle insisted, and said that in order to return to Tian Yin Temple to meet everyone, he had already taken a 3 days must-die pill. In less than a day and night, he would definitely die. Before he died, he had an extremely important matter to inform teacher uncle, and entrusted an important matter to them. If we did not listen to him, even if he died, he would not be able to rest in peace. When we heard till here, we were all shocked and anxious, but in front of Pooji teacher uncle, we eventually had no choice but to let him speak. Originally, I thought that Pooji teacher uncle with his serious injuries most likely was not in his right mind. Who knew that after he said that, he actually said such an evil deed that goes against Buddha's heart and human relations, his sins boundless. Puhong Master quietly sighed, placed his palms together and chanted, Amitabha Buddha. Fa Xiang heard it, also placed his palms together and chanted, and then looked at Ghostly, watched his face gradually turning ashen, continued. Pooji teacher uncle tightly held teacher's hand. While narrating, tears streamed down his aged face. The few of us who were listening at the side were more and more shocked, almost to the point that our hair stood on end. Pooji teacher uncle said, in order to realize his wish to comprehend Buddhism and Taoism as one, a few days ago he once again went up to Qingyun Hill to pay his respects to Qingyun's sect head Reverend Daoxian. To express his views, unfortunately he was rejected by Reverend Daoxian. In his disappointment, he strolled down the mountain, came to a small village at the foot of Qingyun Hill. That small village was called Grass Temple Village. Ha! A muffled sound, almost at the same time as the 3 words Grass Temple Village. Ghost Lee's hand holding onto the table. In his agitation, he forcefully twisted off a corner of the table, crushed it into powder, sprinkled it down from his palms. Fa Xiang glanced at that table, secretly sighed in his heart, but continued. That day when Pooji teacher uncle walked into Grass Temple Village, temporarily rested in a dilapidated small temple at the back of the village, accidentally saw a group of youths fooling around. Just that after 2 of the youths quarreled, the youths could not let go and almost did something regrettable. Luckily, Pooji teacher uncle acted in time and saved one of the youths. The expression on Ghost Lee's face changed once again. His fists were tightly clenched and a painful expression clearly appeared in his eyes. Chapter 344. Pooji teacher uncle initially did not take this matter to heart. Just that the sky was gloomy at that time. As if a storm was approaching, he decided to rest for a night in that dilapidated temple before leaving. Unexpectedly on that night, something happened. Ghost Lee's head buried deeply, not letting anyone else see his face. The memories like knives, like deeply cutting into his heart, blood like a fountain, unstoppable. Fa Xiang's voice slowly reverberated. It was night. Pooji teacher uncle suddenly woke up from his meditation, discovered that a black-attired evil man had sneaked into Grass Temple Village, intending to abduct an extremely talented youth. Pooji teacher uncle naturally could not sit back and do nothing. So he saved that youth, but the matter was strange. He did not expect that black-attired evil man to be so vicious and cunning. Actually used that youth as a cover. His target was Pooji teacher uncle instead. That black-attired evil man secretly placed the world's most lethal poison, 7-tailed centipede, on that youth, poisoned Pooji teacher uncle, and then while Pooji teacher uncle was distracted, he used evil sect evil skills to severely injure Pooji teacher uncle. And it was at that time, Pooji teacher uncle then understood the black-attired evil man's various vicious methods, was because of that great evil object, sinister orb, sealed in Puji teacher uncle's body. Ghostly's shoulders moved, but he did not raise his head. In his sleeves, indistinctly came the familiar cold breath from the sinister orb, thousands of feelings, thousands of emotions and enmity. When all of them surged into the heart, how would you feel? He was silent, speechless, only his entire body tensed up, involuntarily, lightly trembling, although that evil man's methods were sinister and vicious, but Puji teacher uncle's skills were after all extremely profound. Although he was seriously injured, he still used the great Buddhist supernatural powers and fought with that evil man. Both of them were injured. Although he himself was seriously injured and on the verge of death, he still succeeded in scaring that evil man away temporarily. Just that in this process, Puji teacher uncle was shocked to discover that person actually knew Qin Yun's sect Taoism, true ways and skills. Obviously, he was inextricably linked with Qin Yun's sect. When Puji teacher uncle was fighting with that evil person, for some reason, that young man whom he saved in the day also quietly came to the broken temple. After a few fierce battles, that child was affected and fainted. After the fight, Puji teacher uncle scared that black-attired sorcerer away, but he was already at the end of his rope, seriously injured and dying. He had no choice but to swallow a 3-day must-die pill that he obtained by chance in the past to extend his life. Firstly, he knew that he was going to die, and his mind was in a mess. Secondly, he was worried that the evil person would come back to kill him. Although he was not afraid, there were so many villagers in the Grass Temple village. He was afraid that the evil person would kill them all. Wouldn't he have committed a heinous sin? He originally had the intention to seek help from Qin Yun Hill, but that sorcerer obviously had a deep relationship with Qin Yun Hill. If something bad happened to him on the mountain, he would not be afraid of losing his own life, but wouldn't he be wasting many lives? Fa Xiang's face was desolate, as if he was grieving over the desperate situation that Puji was in. Many years ago, Puji teacher uncle had once traveled the world. In the western Great Marsh, he unintentionally subdued the world's most ferocious strange object, sinister orb. With heaven's benevolent heart, he used Buddhism's supernatural powers to suppress this ferocious object and carried it with him day and night to prevent it from harming the people. Just that this sinister orb's ferocious energy was innate. Although the Buddhist powers protected him, it still quietly corroded Puji teacher uncle's mind. Just that usually with the Buddhist powers protecting him, it was not seen. That day, Puji teacher uncle faced a desperate situation. He was going to die, and there were people beside him who would be implicated, and his great wish of understanding Buddhism and Taoism for his whole life looked like it was going to turn into a bubble. He couldn't help but felt agitated and greatly grieved. Unexpectedly, in that seemingly desperate situation, he actually had a whimsical idea, thought of another path to realize his great wish. Ghostly's breathing slowly hastened. Fa Xiang paused for a moment, slowly said, Puji teacher uncle actually thought of privately imparting Tian Yin Temple Buddhism Supreme, True Way Great Brahmin wisdom to a youth, and then let this youth think of a way to join Qin Yun. In this way, he could realize his lifetime's great wish. At that time, he was brooding over the matter of Buddhism and Taoism enlightenment. Once he thought of that, it was like grasping at a life-saving straw, refused to give up. After weighing the pros and cons, he chose that youth whom he saved, imparted to him the true way incantation of great Brahmin wisdom. At the same time, instructed him not to divulge the secret to outsiders. Placed his lifetime's wish all on that youth. He. Ghostly's extremely suppressed laughter flowed out from his drooping face, carrying some desolation, some bitterness, and even some choking with sobs. Not sure if he was laughing at Puji, filled with endless hatred, or was he resenting the heaven, lamenting his fate. Fa Xiang waited for his laughter. A trace of sadness surfaced on his face, continued. After everything was settled, Puji teacher uncle casted a spell to let that youth sleep again, and right now, because of the 3 days must-die pill's effect, his physical strength was already gradually recovering. Initially, he intended to leave and rush back to Tian Yin Temple within 3 days to make arrangements for his funeral. Unexpectedly at this moment, he suddenly remembered Qin Yun's sect is very strict in accepting disciples, and in order to keep the important matter a secret, the youth he chose was not that kind of rare talent that appears once in 1,000 years. Thinking carefully, Qin Yun's sect might not be able to take this youth in. Seeing that his lifetime's greatest wish was about to be fulfilled and he was not far from death, Puji teacher uncle's mind was in a mess. In addition, after he was seriously injured, his Buddhism cultivation was already greatly impaired, far from usual. The vicious energy in his body, which was corroded by the sinister orb, at this moment, acted up, finally committing an irreversible sin. When Puji teacher uncle's mind was in turmoil, attacked by that vicious energy, in his confusion, he only knew how to rack his brains to think of how to fulfill his wish. In his messy thoughts, he actually thought that as long as that youth became an orphan, and it was an extremely serious incident, because it was at the foot of Qin Yun Hill, Qin Yun's sect would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Puhong Master's face suddenly revealed a sorrowful expression. The prayer beads in his hands suddenly sped up, his mouth also chanting incessantly. So, Fa Xiang's voice at this moment started to tremble. Puji teacher uncle actually thought of how to let this child become an orphan, so that he could enter Qin Yun's sect. At that time, his consciousness had already completely lost his nature, completely controlled by the sinister orb's evil energy. Finally, he slowly walked into Grass Temple Village, started killing. And after seeing the first blood, he completely could not control himself. His ferocious nature burst out. He actually massacred the 200-odd people in Grass Temple Village, committed this heinous sin. Enough, don't say any more. Suddenly, Ghostly loudly shouted out, abruptly stood up. On his face, it was already full of tears. Don't say any more. His voice was hoarse, choking with sobs. Fa Xiang was silent, slowly lowered his head. On the meditation bed, Puhong Master opened his eyes, slowly got off the bed, walked to Ghostly, stretched out his hand and gently caressed Ghostly's shoulder, quietly said, "Child, if you want to cry and want to scold, feel free to cry and scold. But what happened that day, you still have to finish listening to it." Ghostly choked with sobs. Puhong Master quietly said, "When Puji Junior Brother regained his consciousness, the grave mistake had already been made. Standing in the mountain of corpses and sea of blood, as if struck by lightning, he was completely dumbstruck. A lifetime of meritorious cultivation, not to mention going down the drain, he harmed so many innocent people. Such a heinous sin almost made his heart torn and lungs torn. And in that muddle-headed state, he rushed back to Tian'an Temple in a daze. Saw me. It was not for anything else but to explain everything to me, state clearly the sins that he had committed. In the midst of his remorse, he begged me on account of our 100 years of brotherhood to redeem 1/10,000th of his sins in the future no matter what. As long as you are in trouble, I must try my best to help." Ghostly tried his best to suppress his emotions, but he was helpless. He had not cried for several decades, as if a man who was always as strong as iron, right now had turned into a tearful man. But his teeth were tightly biting his lips, deeply sinking in. A trace of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. It was caused by his overly agitated state of mind, biting the corner of his mouth. Puhong Master's expression was disappointed, said, "Puji Junior Brother, he left behind these final matters. The poison acted up and finally passed away. On his deathbed, he instructed not to cremate and bury his remains, to use jade ice plate to protect it, leaving this body, hoping in the future if that young man called Zhang Xiaofan knows the truth, then invite him to come here. Let him deal with this sinful body. Flogging and scolding can also be done. Grind the bones and scatter the ashes can also be done. The monks of Tian'an Temple cannot interfere to redeem 1/10,000th of his sins." Ghostly suddenly raised his head. Puhong Master looked straight into his eyes, his face solemn and solemn, slowly said, "What I am saying, you understand, right? That day Junior Brother's dying wish, I have already completed it for him. Now how you want to deal with it, it is up to you. That small house in the backyard, whatever you wish to do, just go over there." Ghostly clenched his teeth, his eyes deep, stared at Puhong Master. For some reason, Puhong Master was not willing to look at him, slowly looked away. Ghostly's panting became louder and louder, his chest heaving up and down. the expression on his face changing rapidly. Suddenly, he seemed to have made up his mind, abruptly turned and strode out. Listening to his footsteps, he was heading towards that last small house. Fa Xiang's countenance changed greatly, exclaimed, "Teacher!" Puhong Master slowly shook his head, an unspeakable deep pain on his face, quietly said, "Let him be. That is also your Puji teacher uncle's last wish. The affairs of the world are so bitter. How many people are able to accept it? Umitba." He gently clasped his palms together, silently chanted. In the room, instantly became quiet. Terrifyingly quiet. Chapter 345. The leisurely morning bell, the heavy evening drum, Mount Meru bathed in the misty clouds. From the rising sun to the afterglow of the evening, the wind and clouds in the sky changed. The white clouds rolled past. Time in the inn did not stop for anyone. Tianyin Temple was majestic and magnificent, towering over Mount Meru, like a compassionate giant looking at the world. Innumerable mortals gathered from all directions in the morning, prostrated and worshipped the deity statues in the Buddhist temple hall, telling their own happy or sad wishes, praying for the deity's blessings and blessings. Millions of people came, gathered, thousands of people dispersed, parted day after day. It had never changed, gathering and dispersing like years. Only that golden deities in the temple, the unextinguished lamp in front of the hall, smoke curling up in spirals, saw the vicissitudes of the world. Ghost Li, or rather Zhang Xiaofan, once again entered the small house where Puji Divine Monk's body was. Another day and night passed. In between, there was not the slightest movement in that small house. Puhong Master once went to the small courtyard outside the house. After standing for a long time, again sighed and left. Only Fa Xiang, ever since Ghostly entered that room, he had been standing in the courtyard outside the house, with an unexpected patience, waiting. Nobody knew why Fa Xiang wanted to stand there, but including Puhong Master, the other Tianyin Temple monks did not ask him, and Fa Xiang also stood there alone and persistently, as if waiting for something. The setting sun was like blood, reflecting the sunset glow in the western horizon. Looking from afar, there seemed to be a thin layer of golden light at the edge of the clouds, extremely beautiful. The beautiful scenery of heaven and earth was actually by your side. It was just whether you looked or not, whether you had the intention or not. Fa Xiang gazed into the distance at the sunset glow, lost in thought. He who had stood for a day and night, his delicate face did not seem to have the slightest tiredness. Instead, his clear eyes glimmered with profound wisdom. "What are you looking at?" Suddenly, a voice was heard beside him. Fa Xiang was startled, woke up from his thoughts. Puhong Master had come to this courtyard again, standing beside him, smiling at him. Fa Xiang put his palms together and replied, reporting to Master, "Disciple was gazing at the sunset in the western sky when I suddenly had an epiphany and was lost in thought. I didn't know that Master had arrived. I have neglected you." Puhong Master smiled and said, "Mere common customs, don't mind. I wonder what you comprehended from that sunset glow in the western sky." Fa Xiang pondered for a moment and said, "Disciple has been standing here for a day and a night, watching the stars at night and seeing the blue sky during the day. Until now the bustling has subsided and the rising sun has sunk to the east, leaving only a few rays of light to illuminate the western sky. I don't feel sorrow in my heart. Life is like this. Time is like this. Everything in the world is like this. For a moment, I didn't know that I was born in this world, so insignificant like a grain in the ocean. What is the meaning of living?" Puhong Master nodded and said, "You indeed have extraordinary wisdom, disciple. Everything in the world had their own destiny, so even though they were ever-changing, there was still a Tao that couldn't be defied. It's already very impressive that you can comprehend this level of truth from the rising and setting of the sun." Fa Xiang respectfully bowed to Puhong Master, said, "Thank you, teacher, for your praise. Disciple does not deserve it. Just that although disciple had some enlightenment, the bewilderment in my heart instead increased and became bigger. Disciple does not understand. Since the destiny has been decided, all living things will eventually wither. These countless people busy their lives, entangled in worldly gratitude, grudges, and love. Why? My Buddha said to deliver all living beings from suffering, All living beings can also be converted, but the living beings might not be willing to be converted by my Buddha. Why is that? Could it be that Buddha said the Western paradise, no grudges, no hatred, heartless, no desires, actually cannot attract all living beings? Disciple is ignorant. Teacher, please enlighten me. After speaking, Xiang lowered his head, placed his palms together, and chanted. Puhong Master watched Xiang for a long time, slowly nodded, a trace of smile on his face, but did not answer immediately. Instead looked at the sunset glow in the western sky that Xiang was looking at. After a moment said, "What you saw just now, was it this sunset glow in the western sky?" Xiang said, "Yes, disciple saw this time flying by, the rising sun setting in the western sky. Time no longer exists. My heart is sorrowful and bewildered, so I asked teacher." Puhong Master smiled and said, "After a while, this setting sun will completely set. At that time, even this sunset glow will not be seen." Xiang was slightly bewildered, did not know what Puhong Master meant, could only reply, said, "That's right." Puhong Master indifferently looked at the western sky horizon, saw that setting sun slowly setting, the sky getting darker and darker. Dusk was approaching, indifferently said, "The setting sun is heartless, cannot be held back. But tomorrow morning, will you still be able to see this rising sun?" Xiang's body shook, his heart seemed to be moved. For a moment he could not speak, his face looked thoughtful. Puhong Master turned back to look at Xiang, smiled faintly, and did not speak again. The sky gradually darkened, the setting sun finally completely set. Not long after, a bright moon was seen slowly rising from the eastern sky, moonlight like water, dazzling clear splendor, spilling onto the mortal world. In the night, Tian'in Temple under the moonlight was quiet and serene, although not as bustling as it was during the day, but it had another kind of quiet and serene beauty. And in little Tian'in Temple at Mount Meru, in that small courtyard, teacher and disciple both did not speak a word, quietly stood in the courtyard, in the mountain breeze that gently brushed past and fluttered the corner of their clothes, quietly stood there. Not knowing how much time had passed, the moon was near the middle of the sky. In the quiet courtyard, suddenly a burst of light laughter was heard. Xiang's face was filled with joy, stepped forward a few steps, walked to the middle of the courtyard, looked up at the moon, the dazzling moonlight, spilling onto his moon-white monk robe, like frost and snow. Xiang laughed, turned around and knelt down to Puhong Master, who had been smiling and standing beside, put his palms together and bowed, said, "Thank you, teacher, for your guidance. Disciple is enlightened." Puhong Master's eyes were filled with gratification, right now looking at his disciple kneeling in front of him, even though he had long cultivated to the state of being indifferent to favor or humiliation. His face also revealed a sincere expression of joy. He stretched out his hand and gently caressed Xiang's head, said 3 words in succession. "Good, good, good. You are talented and rare in the world. But more importantly, you have a different level of wisdom towards Buddhist studies and Buddhist principles. At that time among us 4 senior and junior brothers, your Puji teacher uncle was the most intelligent. Unfortunately, although he was intelligent, but he took the wrong path, delayed his Buddhism studies, vainly sought for immortality, and finally ended up in such an unbearable end. Today you are enlightened. It is your good fortune and also our Tian'in Temple's good fortune." Xiang was surprised, looked up at Puhong Master, said, "Teacher, what do you mean, disciple does not understand?" Puhong Master shook his head, first stretched out his hand to help Xiang up, and then the joy on his face gradually faded, faintly said, "These few years, teacher has been engrossed in mundane affairs day and night, to the extent that my understanding of Buddhism has stagnated, yet I have wrongly accepted this worldly reputation, half a lifetime of struggle, unable to give it up. That year after your Puji teacher uncle passed away, teacher had the intention to live in seclusion, but helplessly there was no one under me. Facing this founder's foundation, although it is a worldly possession, but in the end, I cannot easily give it up. Now that I have you, I can go without worry." Xiang was shocked, his face turned pale, his body that had just stood up immediately knelt down again, anxiously said, "Teacher, what are you saying? How can Tian'in Temple leave you? Moreover, disciple also have to accompany teacher day and night. Listen to your teachings. But I beg teacher to never abandon disciple and Tian temple disciples and live in seclusion. After speaking, he kowtowed incessantly. Puhong master laughed in spite of himself, and then sighed, pulled Xiang up, sighed and said, foolish child, how can there be any banquet that does not come to an end? But the matter of teacher going into seclusion is not urgent. It is not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. You don't have to be anxious. You have to settle everything properly. Then I can be at ease. Xiang's eyes were glistening with tears, but in the end he knew that Puhong master's intention to go into seclusion was unstoppable. Fortunately, like what teacher said, although he had the intention, but it was not urgent yet. In the future, when there is a chance, he will try to persuade teacher. Thinking of that, he stopped with tears in his eyes, stood aside. Puhong master looked up at the sky, saw the moonlight shining through, sad and beautiful. He gazed for a long time, suddenly said, let's go in and see that young patron. Xiang was surprised, said what? Puhong master indifferently said, right and wrong, gratitude and grudges, feelings and enmity, no matter what, there will eventually be a result. After speaking, he did not speak anymore, walked towards its small house. Xiang slowly followed behind him. Watching that door getting closer and closer, for some reason, his heart started to feel nervous. Chapter 346. One day and one night. In that time, facing Puji teacher uncle, what exactly did Ghostly do? What would he do? The answer, when they lifted the curtains and pushed open the wooden door, quietly walked into the house, appeared in front of them. Inside the empty house, the silver light from the jade ice plate was still flickering. Nothing happened. Puji body was still sitting cross-legged on the jade ice plate, and opposite him, Ghostly, or rather Zhang Xiaofan, sat cross-legged, his back facing Puhong master and Xiang, quietly watching Puji's face in the faint light. Puhong master breathed deeply, was about to speak when he suddenly felt a movement behind him, turned around and looked. It was Xiang gently pulling his sleeve. After seeing Puhong master turning around, he signaled with his eyes, looked below Ghostly's body. Puhong master turned and looked, couldn't help but frowned. Nothing in the house had changed. Only where Ghostly was sitting cross-legged, within 3 chi radius of the floor, cracks were everywhere. Densely packed fine cracks crawled all over the ground around him. The closer it was to his body, the denser the cracks. Within 1 chi radius of his body, all of the bricks were no longer cracked, instead completely turned into powder. This one day and one night, nobody knew what exactly happened to Ghostly. Perhaps no one would ever know. Puhong master slowly walked to Ghostly, glanced at the ground, using a calm voice, said, patron, you've already stayed here for 1 day and 1 night. Have you thought it through? Ghostly slowly looked away from Puji body, looked at Puhong master. Puhong master's heart shook. Ghostly's face was pale, his face tired. Although he had only sat here for 1 day and 1 night, but his face looked weathered by the vicissitudes of life, had already experienced 100 years of life. Puhong master placed his palms together, softly chanted, Amit Ba Buddha. Ghostly slowly stood up, but halfway. Suddenly his body trembled. His footing was unsteady. Xiang and Puhong frowned. When Xiang was about to go up to support him, Ghostly had already steadied himself, inhaled deeply, and then again stood up straight, facing Puhong master. His body was obviously weak, but for some reason, right now he seemed as tall and sturdy as Mount Meru. Master! His voice was a little hoarse. Puhong master placed his palms together. Yes, what instructions does young patron have? Let the dead rest in peace, cremate him. Master Puji's Dharmakaya and bury him. Puhong master and Fa were shocked, looked at Ghostly. The next moment, Puhong master heaved a long sigh, quietly said, patron, have you gotten over it? Ghostly smiled sadly, glanced at Puji, who was sitting cross-legged in the faint light. The muscles on his face tightened, and then relaxed, unhurriedly said, I only had a 1-night stand with this master, but I had once knelt before him, willingly kowtowed to him, called him teacher. He saved me, but he also harmed me. But without him, there would be no me, and the dead would be dead. Although I'm not a disciple of Buddhism, I know that Buddhism values reincarnation the most. He refused to be buried even before he died, so it's obvious that he was filled with regret. An icy cold air indistinctly emitted from his hands. Puhong Master and Fa Fei almost at the same time felt it, that surging strange evil power. The sinister orb evil power is fierce. These few years I have experienced it personally, more or less understand the reason. Speaking until here, Ghostly slowly turned around, walked towards the door. His hoarse voice occasionally emitted a cough or two. Puhong Master and Fa Fei were at the same time behind him. Facing his back figure, placed their palms together and chanted. Puhong Master then said, "Young patron's benevolence, touch the heaven and earth. Old monk here on behalf of the deceased unfilial junior brother Puji thank patron. Old monk will solemnly obey patron's instructions. Later, I will cremate junior brother's Dharmakaya and bury him. Just that before this, patron has any other instructions?" Ghostly had already walked to the door. His hand stretched towards the door, but after a moment, he paused. His entire body seemed to freeze there. Puhong Master and Fa Fei did not know his intentions. For the moment only looked at him, did not speak. Ghostly slowly turned around. Once again saw that old and slightly pained face. This face, he had only seen it twice in his life. 10 over years of time. In that instant it surged into his heart. In the end, what was left was that stormy night, his benevolent and peaceful smile. He was Ghostly, or Zhang Xiaofan. Who would know? And who would care? Pooh, that man was at the door, facing the remains of the Dharmakaya, who was sitting cross-legged on the shimmering jade plate. Just like the young man back then, he knelt down and kowtowed 3 times. Then, he raised his head and looked solemn. There was a deep and endless pain on his face as he said, "Master." Complete silence. "Teacher you. Rest in peace." He spoke in a low voice and then stood up, without another word, turned and opened the door, walked out. Puhong and Fa Fei, who were highly skilled, for the moment were also stunned speechless, only saw Ghostly walking out of this small house. In the silence, Fa Fei sighed, said, He really has great wisdom, great benevolence and compassion. Really an extraordinary man in the world, Amitabha." Puhong Master turned around, looked at the Dharmakaya, after a long time, put his palms together and said, "Junior brother, you can finally rest in peace." "Eh?" Puhong Master's surprised exclamation made Fa Fei also shocked, quickly followed Puhong Master's gaze. Immediately his body shook, his face full of astonishment. Puji's body sitting cross-legged on the jade ice plate had already undergone a change. In the spots of snow-like silver-white light, Puji's body actually turned into powder like sand and stone. Little by little it turned into dust so fine that it was almost invisible to the naked eye, slowly falling down. For some reason, the original trace of pain on his aged face had disappeared. Instead, he seemed to have revealed a gratified smile. The weathering speed was getting faster and faster. The entire body was about to disappear. Puhong Master's eyes were filled with tears, put his palms together and said, Junior brother, your wish has been fulfilled. Senior brother is happy for you. From now on the Buddhist sea is boundless. You better take care of yourself." The Dharmakaya swiftly weathered, finally completely turned into white dust. In the middle of the silvery white light emitted by the jade plate, slowly fell down. And at this moment, after the jade plate received the dust, the magical weapon's light abruptly flourished. In the tightly shut small house, there was an inexplicable force, blowing wind. Indistinctly, there seemed to be Buddhist chanting, leisurely traveled over. The jade plate's light became brighter and brighter. The wind speed in the small house also became faster and faster. Puhong and Fa Fei's monk robes fluttered loudly. Both looked at each other in shock. Suddenly, a sharp whistle was heard from the jade plate. The light burst out. Countless of dust soaked in the snow-like light flew out in all directions. A loud rumble immediately erupted. Boom! Dust flew up and was immediately covered by the enormous dazzling light. The walls around the small house were instantly destroyed by the jade plate's strange light. Not a single trace was left. The moonlight shone high up, clear like snow, reflecting on this mountain peak, the quiet mortal world. There was actually such a strange scene. The jade plate in a stretch of light slowly rose up from where it was, beside this treasure, the silver-white dust danced, as if it had spirituality following it. In the courtyard outside the house, Ghostly stood silently, looking up at the sky, his face full of tears. The jade plate flew over by itself, circled around Ghostly's body 3 times, and finally stopped in front of Ghostly. Ghostly stared at the specks of dust, clenched his teeth, almost unable to control himself. Following which, in that almost solidified brilliance, in the bleak and beautiful night scene of heaven and earth, the jade ice dish made a light sound, like breaking ice and snow. The clear sound reverberated. In front of Ghostly, this heaven and earth treasure similarly turned into countless of dust, glittering under the moonlight, like falling snow in profusion, brilliant and dazzling. From afar, the mountain breeze blew over, countless dust floated up with the wind, fluttering in the air, carried by the wind far away, finally gradually disappeared. Chapter 347. Qingyan Hill, Big Bamboo Valley. From the end of the Qingyan battle till now, many days had passed. The battlefield, which had changed drastically, also gradually quietened down, all traces of the battle, quietly erased in the process of people cleaning up. On that day, not knowing how many people lost their friends and loved ones, on Tongtian Peak, even more piled up corpses, from the peak to the foot, it was like the legendary Hell. Maybe it was because of luck. Big Bamboo Valley, which had the least number of disciples. In this battle, not a single disciple died, but almost everyone was wounded. Even Tian Bui, who was guarding Big Bamboo Valley to activate the Tianji seal, also looked very tired. Among the disciples, second disciple Wu Dui, fourth disciple Hidaji both had the heaviest injuries. After these few days, they were still bedridden to recuperate, but the silver lining in the misfortune, they did not suffer any serious injuries. After Tian Bui personally checked, they only needed to recuperate quietly. In the future, it wouldn't be an obstacle to their cultivation. Just that even though it was so, and they had just narrowly defeated the beast deity in a life and death battle and averted the calamity for the common people, the atmosphere in Big Bamboo Valley looked extremely gloomy. The disciple for the past few days could not cheer up. Even Tian Bui also frowned tightly. This day early in the morning, Tian Bui was summoned to Tongtian Peak by sect head Reverend Daoxian's disciples. After he returned at noon, his round plump face, gloomy, his brows furrowed together, looking like it could not be opened anymore. Around noon, Tian Bui ordered all the Big Bamboo Valley disciples to gather at Shoujing Hall, even Wu Daoyi and Hidaji, who were bedridden. Tian Bui also got someone to support them to the hall, sat them down. The usually deserted observed silence hall. It was a rare occasion that everyone was present. Tian Bai's wife, Suru, also stood beside the seat of honor, looking at her graceful bearing, just that her left hand was still wrapped in a white bandage. Naturally, she was also wounded in that battle. Tian Bui clasped his hands behind his back, paced up and down the hall a few times, glanced at the disciples who were either sitting or standing in a row, and a deep voice said, "Today I called all of you here, not for anything else. It is still because of that Zhu Xian ancient sword." All the disciples had solemn expressions on their faces, but not many of them were shocked. It was obvious that most of them had already guessed it. Tian Bui and Suru looked at each other, then looked at the disciples, said, "This morning sect head Reverend called me over again, and with me, only your small Bamboo Valley Shuiwa teacher uncle. As for what she said, all of you can probably guess. The matter of Zhu Xian ancient sword being destroyed, no matter what, you must keep it a secret, must not leak out even a little bit of information." The Big Bamboo Valley disciples looked at each other. In the end, it was eldest disciple Xavion who coughed and said, "Sure, Fu, you also know us. Such an important matter, we would rather die than say a word to the public." Speaking till here, he hesitated for a moment, looked at Tian Bui, lowered his voice, said, "Master, not to mention you and Shenyang have already reminded us several times. Just sect head Reverend and Tong Tian Peak side. Including this time, it is already the 4th time such a message came. Could it be that not only do they not believe us, they don't even believe Master and Master's wife?" Tian Bui frowned, suddenly shouted loudly, "Insolence! Who are you? actually dare to make presumptuous assumptions about sect head reverend and the teachers? Xavion's countenance changed, bowed his head, and said, "Yes, disciple knows his mistake." Suru stood at the side, sighed, walked over to smooth things over, said, all right, these are all instructions from sect head reverend, and the matter of Zhu Xian ancient sword being destroyed is too important. No wonder sect head senior brother is so nervous about it. So asking a few more times, explaining a few more times is also right. Tian Bui turned his head to one side, did not speak. Xavion and the rest of the disciples all bowed their heads and said, "Disciple understands." Suru looked at the disciples one by one, softly said, "I know the few of you feel rather wronged, feel that sect head reverend and the teachers cannot believe you. Actually, in the end, these are all due to the importance of the matter. We have no choice." After the previous battle, our Qin Yun's sect's reputation in the world's good faction was unparalleled, suppressing all the other fellow good faction members. But all of this, to put it bluntly, is because sect head reverend on Tongtian Peak, wielding Zhu Xian's celestial sword in his hand in a fierce battle with the beast deity, defeated it. For our Qin Yun sect to have what we have today, the weight of this Zhu Xian celestial sword, I think all of you are as clear as I am. Suru spoke until here, gave a mournful smile, said, "But we never expected this celestial sword would actually." She paused as if to compose herself before continuing, said, "That day outside the illusory moon cave, other than sect head reverend and a few elders teacher uncles who rushed over, there were only big Bamboo Valley disciples and a few small Bamboo Valley female disciples who witnessed the celestial sword being destroyed. So for our sect's reputation and reputation in the world, sect head reverend side is more considerate. Exhorting a few more times is also right. All of you do not take it to heart. Just remember to hide this matter forever in your heart. Understand?" Xavion and the rest looked at each other, said in unison, "Disciples understand. We will obey teacher and teacher's wife's orders." Suru turned to look at Tian Bui. Tian Bui was frowning, his fat face still very solemn, as if completely not comforted by Suru's words, only stretched out his hand and waved to the disciples, said, "What your teacher's wife said, all of you better remember." "All right, go down." Xavion and the rest bowed together, turned and went down together. Wu Di, Hidaji, and the rest, who had difficulty moving, were also supported by Xavion, Du Baishu, and the rest. Very soon, everyone left, leaving only Tian Bui and Suru standing in the observed silence hall. Suru looked at Tian Bai's increasingly gloomy face, slowly walked to his side, quietly said, "What is it? Is sect head senior brother throwing a tantrum again?" Tian Bui faintly snorted, said, "He is not only throwing a tantrum at me. Even Shueiwe, the kind of person, he actually scolded her too. What am I?" Suru was shocked, exclaimed, "What? Sect head senior brother, he even scolded Shueiwe's senior sister?" A trace of impatience appeared on Tian Bai's face. The pace of his pacing obviously quickened. His brows also frowned even tighter. Suru looked at his expression, was rather worried but did not know what to say, could only say, "You also don't need to worry too much. Sect head senior brother, he is just too anxious for a moment." So Tian Bui abruptly raised his head, loudly interrupted, "If he is really too anxious, even if he scolds me 1,000 or 10,000 times, I won't care." Suru lowered her head but quickly raised it again, a shocked expression on her face, asked, "What did you say just now?" Tian Bui mumbled incessantly, quickly paced back and forth in the observed silence hall. His expression became more and more restless, and even indistinctly showed a trace of worry. Suru became even more worried, anxiously said, "What exactly do you mean? Quickly say it." Tian Bui walked to Suru, stopped, was silent for a moment, in a deep voice said, "These few days, Daoxian senior brother many times summoned me, and Shueiwe repeatedly exhorted the sect disciples to keep the secret. This is understandable. But these few times, I see something is wrong with Daoxian senior brother." Suru was startled, said, "Wrong? What do you mean?" Tian Bui frowned, said, "In the past, do you remember Daoxian senior brother scolding people so easily?" Suru was silent. After a long time, shook her head, said, Sect Head Senior Brother is highly skilled. His character is upright. He does not show his emotions. How would he scold people so easily? Tian Bui nodded, said, That's right. It is so. Even you also know this. But after this big battle, Daoxian Senior Brother's temperament seemed to have changed greatly. He became more and more irritable. These few times he summoned me and Shui Yue, just exhorting a little is enough. But every time he started with a pleasant expression, in the end, for some reason, because of some inexplicable small matters, he would fly into a rage, or scold, or vent his anger, anyway. He shook his head, slowly raised his eyes to look at Suru, hesitated for a moment, walked up to Suru, lowered his voice and said, I suspect Daoxian Senior Brother in the battle with the beast deity, he had already been counterattacked by Zhu Xian Sword Spirit. So, Suru's expression changed, anxiously said, Shut up. After speaking, she quickly walked out of the observed silence hall, glanced left and right. After making sure there was no one, walked back and whispered to Tian Bui, This is our Qing Yun sect's secret. You cannot speak carelessly. Tian Bui sighed, said, This matter is of such great importance. How would I dare to speak carelessly? But in the previous big battle, Daoxian Senior Brother, in order to win, disregarded my repeated dissuasion, forcefully opened the Tianji seal, which sealed Qing Yun's 7 veins of spiritual energy by generations of founders, causing Zhu Xian Ancient Sword's power to increase greatly. Just that every time I recalled the last words left by the founders, this Zhu Xian Ancient Sword's vicious energy was too strong. Its murderous energy against the heaven seemed to be an inauspicious object. I cannot treat it lightly. When I returned today, I parted with Shui Yue at Tongtian Peak. Although both of us have always been at odds, but when we parted, we seemed to feel something. I guess that Shui Yue must have the same thoughts as me, just that this matter is too important. Both of us dare not speak it out. Chapter 348. Suru was silent for a long time. Her voice, slightly hoarse, said, Even so, but in the end it is still above Zhu Xian. Now that Zhu Xian has been destroyed, even if Sect Head Senior Brother is unfortunate to be harmed. But firstly, there is no source. Secondly, his skills are divine. As long as time passes, most likely he will gradually come to his senses and resolve it himself. Tian Bai's solemn expression did not diminish at all, faintly said, I hope so. If not, with his position as Qing Yun's leader, if anything happens to him, this Qing Yun sect from top to bottom really don't know how to clean up the mess. Suru thought for a moment, then helplessly sighed, dejectedly said, Forget it. This is also not something we can manage now. You don't have to be too troubled. There is one more thing. I have always wanted to ask, after Zhu Xian's sword was destroyed, how was it dealt with? Tian Bui pondered for a moment, said, I have inquired about this matter from a senior brother, who is in the know, heard that after Daoxian Senior Brother reprimanded everyone not to leak it out, he immediately picked up the broken Zhu Xian sword and at the same time walked into the illusory moon cave, not allowing anyone to enter the illusory moon cave forbidden grounds. So until today, no one knew what happened to that Zhu Xian ancient sword. Maybe there is still hope to repair it? Tian Bui said the last sentence to himself, but then shook his head with a bitter smile. Obviously, even he himself did not believe such a thing. After a few bitter laughs, he casually said, We can't care about that sword. But today, when we went to Tongtian Peak, other than suffering an inexplicable scolding, we also heard of a strange matter. Suru was surprised, said, What strange matter? Tian Bui shrugged his shoulders, said, You won't believe it even if I say it. In the previous battle, how many disciples and elders died, and now at Tongtian Peak's Crystal Hall Public Memorial. But that Daoxian Senior Brother of ours only showed his face once a day and then disappeared. Instead, he went to the back mountain to keep vigil for people at Founder's Ancestral Hall every day. Don't you think it's strange? Suru was stunned, said in surprise, Keep vigil? What happened at Founder's Ancestral Hall? Don't tell me a senior elder has passed away. Tian Bui shook his head, sneered and said, What elder? I heard a few disciples secretly discussing. Actually, it was an old man who had been guarding and cleaning the Founder's Ancestral Hall for decades. For some reason, he happened to die that day. How he died, nobody knows. Only know that after Daoxian's senior brother knew about it, he was dumbstruck for a while and then flew into a rage. Heard that he was in a daze for a few days. In the end, he insisted on placing this old man's memorial tablet into the founder's ancestral hall. But the strangest thing was the memorial tablet that he placed in the founder's ancestral hall was actually blank. The more Sura listened, the more confused she became. She was even more shocked in her heart. She shook her head and said, what exactly is going on? Could it be that Sec Head Shi Xiang is really a little muddled? Tian Beli sneered, said, no one knows whether he is muddle-headed or not. Anyway, someone advised him, but he refused to listen. And he did not take a good look at the memorial tablets of the disciples in the Crystal Hall. Instead, he went to the founder's ancestral hall to stare at the empty memorial tablet in a daze. If this goes on, I think this Qingyun sect, sooner or later something will happen. Sooner or later it will be destroyed in his hands. Suru was silent. After a long while, faintly sighed, looked out of the observed silence hall, saw that in this lonely afternoon, the outside was also empty, only the blue sky in the distance. The mountain breeze blew past, indistinctly heard the rustling of the bamboos at the back of the mountain, but for some reason, it instead added a sense of loneliness. Qingyun Hill, Tong Tian Peak, Founder's ancestral hall at the back of the mountain. This place was as quiet and solemn as usual. The tall ancestral hall still stood tall, the surrounding woods as green as before, as if the earth-shattering battle that happened on Qingyun Hill a few days ago did not affect this place at all. Other than one less cleaning elder, and on that dim altar, in an inconspicuous place among the countless memorial tablets, there was an additional unfamiliar and blank memorial tablet. Lin Jingyu silently knelt before that empty memorial tablet, dressed in mourning clothes, a brazier placed in front of him, 2 white candles on the table, 3 thin incense sticks, light smoke curling up, gently floated up and soon blended into the other offerings, never to be separated again. Lin Jingyu looked sorrowful, his lips tightly pursed, woodenly kneeling on the ground, slowly threw the stack of paper money in his hands into the burning tongues of flame in the brazier, watching them gradually curl and turn yellow, gradually turning into ashes, and then slowly threw in new paper money. In between, he looked up at that empty memorial tablet from time to time. To place this elder's memorial tablet in the founder's ancestral hall, it was Qingyun's sect head, Reverend Daoxian, alone. The other elders did not agree, just that Qingyun's sect head had always held great authority. In addition, after Reverend Daoxian defeated the beast deity, his reputation became even more unparalleled. Everyone saw that he insisted and could only follow him. Just that although this matter was out of Lin Jingyu's expectations, but what happened next made him even more surprised. Reverend Daoxian actually placed an empty memorial tablet in the founder's ancestral hall. For this, Lin Jingyu even boldly asked Reverend Daoxian, who came to pay his respects. Unexpectedly, Reverend Daoxian only indifferently retorted with a question, and Lin Jingyu was rendered speechless. Then, do you know his name? Lin Jingyu was dumbstruck. Although he had followed this mysterious elder for 10 years, but regarding this elder's own past, this elder had never revealed anything to him. Right now, to make Lin Jingyu say anything, he was really at his wit's end. Just that looking at Reverend Daoxian's expression, it was obvious that he more or less knew something about this elder, but he had no intention of revealing it. Although Lin Jingyu was puzzled, but in the end he did not dare to be too presumptuous in front of Reverend Daoxian, and could only silently retreat. Anyway, in his heart, although this elder's memorial tablet was empty, but his voice and smile were clearly engraved in his heart and had never faded. The public memorial ceremony at the front mountain, he had also paid his respects before, just that he always felt that there were innumerable disciples paying their respects there. But this elder, although he possessed exceptional skills, yet quietly left the mortal world, no matter what he had to send him off, and Reverend Daoxian seemed to have tacitly allowed him to come here, to help this elder clear up his funeral affairs. And he, as the sect head, disregarding the shocked gazes of the many disciples, frequently came to this founder's ancestral hall to visit this elder's empty memorial tablet, which caused many conjectures, but Lin Jingyu could not be bothered about it. Right now, footsteps were heard behind him. For the past few days, Lin Jingyu was already familiar with the footsteps. Once he heard it, he knew it was Reverend Daoxian. He stood up and turned back, quietly said, "Sect head." Reverend Daoxian unhurriedly walked into the founder's ancestral hall. The hall was dimly lit, although Lin Jingyu had been staying here, but for the moment he could not see Daoxian's face clearly. He could only vaguely see Daoxian's figure, standing in the shadows, silently looking at the empty memorial tablet beside him. For some reason, Lin Jingyu looked at that indistinct figure in the darkness, suddenly felt something was not right. But what exactly was wrong? He could not pinpoint it, only felt an inexplicable palpitation, indistinctly nervous. Is he still well? Reverend Daoxian finally spoke. His voice seemed rather deep, hoarse, and also seemed to be exerting force, suppressing something very different from his usual tone. Lin Jingyu was even more puzzled but still replied, "Disciple kept vigil for elder day and night, burned incense punctually, never neglected." That figure in the shadows moved, unhurriedly said, "He has sent him off so wholeheartedly. His 10 years of teaching you was not in vain." Ha ha! His laughter was cold. In this dimly lit founder's ancestral hall, there was some eeriness. "Don't know if I die then." He suddenly stopped, seemed to feel that he had said something wrong. Lin Jingyu naturally did not dare to speak, stood there with his hands at his side. The founder's ancestral hall fell into silence. After a moment, Reverend Daoxian said, "You go out for a while. I have some words to speak to him alone." Lin Jingyu was surprised, acknowledged, said yes. Speaking, he strode out. Once out of the founder's ancestral hall, standing on the open space under the sunlight, Lin Jingyu immediately felt his spirits lifted. He then realized, in that hall, he seemed to have a repressed feeling. He walked one round around the hall, waited for almost an hour but still did not see Reverend Daoxian coming out. While he was puzzled, turned back and happened to see a back figure disappearing on the small path leading to the illusory moon cave. Ever since the battle ended, the illusory moon cave once again became a restricted area. The one who could enter, naturally, was only Reverend Daoxian alone. Lin Jingyu glanced around, shook his head, turned, and walked back into the founder's ancestral hall. He walked to the front of the empty memorial tablet and saw that in front of the memorial tablet, 3 thin incense sticks had been inserted again, and there seemed to be a lot more ashes in the brazier in front of it, as if someone had burned some paper money here. Lin Jingyu pondered for a moment, slowly raised his head. That empty tablet was still quietly standing in that secluded corner, silent. Chapter 349. The sound of the bell once again reverberated throughout Shumi Mountain, announcing the beginning of a new day. The rising sun, from the eastern horizon, shone the first rays of sunlight into the world. In the early morning, there were already many people walking up the stairs to the majestic temple. Most of them held incense and candles in their hands, their faces full of piety. Some of them even brought their children along to worship. The children were innocent and did not feel tired on the mountain road. Many of them were running back and forth in high spirits. The morning fog was about to disperse, lingering outside the Tian'in temple, and the air felt a little moist. The monks who woke up early had already finished the necessary morning lessons of the day. At this moment, they were all cleaning the courtyard, gently sweeping away the fallen leaves from last night. The whole Tian'in temple, at this moment, seemed solemn and quiet, bathed in the light mountain breeze, blowing with the wind. There was a faint scent of leaves. The sound of the bell drifted, guiding the people at the foot of the mountain, and also hovered in the temple, waking up the sleeping people. He slowly woke up from his sleep. For a long time, he had not slept so peacefully, woke up so peacefully. Even in his dreams, he was very peaceful, not even dreaming, just sleeping peacefully. It turned out that this was a feeling that made people happy. He silently listened to the melodious sound of the bell, as if the place where the sound drifted was not the vast world outside, but his heart. He even had a feeling that the sound of the bell was originally for him alone. Until the sound of the bell gradually subsided, he slowly got up, opened the door, and walked out. He raised his head, opened his chest, and took a deep breath. The moist air of the mountain poured into his heart. His face slowly showed a rare look of satisfaction. He really wanted to continue standing like this. But at this moment, a voice came from the courtyard door. "Benefactor Zhang, are you up?" Ghostly turned his head and saw F.A. Xiang with a smile, standing not far from the door looking at him. He nodded and said, "Good morning." Fa Xiang sized him up and smiled. Benefactor, after this period of rest, the injuries on your body are mostly healed. However, as they say, once you recover from a serious illness, you will have to take care of yourself, Benefactor. Mount Meru's terrain is rather high. Sooner or later, it won't be comparable to the secular world. The cold air is very heavy. Benefactor, please be careful. Ghostly nodded and said, "Thank you for your concern. I will remember it. In addition, I don't know if Abbot Pu Hong is free today. I hope I can pay a visit to the Grand Master and disturb him for a moment." Fa Xiang smiled and said, "That's good. I'm here on my master's orders to invite Benefactor Zhang to meet us after breakfast." Ghostly was stunned for a moment and said, "What? Could it be that Master Abbot is looking for me for something?" Fa Xiang said, "This little monk doesn't know, but I think it's because I want to ask Benefactor about your injuries." Ghostly pondered for a moment and said, "Since that's the case, this one will go and pay a visit to the abbot later." Fa Xiang put his palms together and said, "Benefactor doesn't need to be anxious. Just now, Abbot Fong Zhang specifically instructed us not to rush Benefactor. Benevolent Master is still in the little Tianyin Temple's meditation room at the mountaintop. If Benefactor has time later, feel free to go there yourself." Fa Xiang smiled faintly and said, "In the Tianyin Temple, as long as Benefactor is willing, Benefactor can go to any place without any scruples." Ghostly's heart moved. He looked at Fa Xiang. Fa Xiang's words seemed to have a deep meaning, as if he had already regarded him as a member of the Tianyin Temple. Perhaps, in the hearts of these Tianyin Temple monks, he, who had once worshipped Puji, after all, was also a member of the Tianyin Temple. Fa Xiang turned and left. Ghostly looked at his back, was silent for a moment, and then walked back to his own meditation room. The moment he stepped on a mountaintop, Ghostly couldn't help but slightly pause his body. For him, this was a place that made him have mixed feelings. Under the morning sun, the little Tianyin Temple was simply located in front of him. The low walls, the small courtyard, were the traces of that night's thrilling. Looking back, looking into the distance, there were faint voices coming from the Tianyin Temple. The incense was flourishing, a lively scene. Perhaps these people who live in peace are happier? He silently turned and walked into the little Tianyin Temple. Soon, the unique silence shrouded him. In such a large courtyard, it seemed that only his footsteps were echoing. When he reached the door of the meditation room, Ghostly stopped and subconsciously looked at the back of the courtyard. The path there was blocked by the wall, but he could still see the direction that extended back. But at this time, in the last small courtyard, there was only emptiness. It was like a person came naked and left empty. He knocked on the door of the meditation room. Soon, the gentle voice of Master Pu Hong came from the room. "Is it Benefactor Zhang? Please come in." Ghostly faintly answered, pushed the door, and went in. At this moment, only Master Pu Hong was sitting cross-legged on the Zen bed, looking at Ghostly with a smile on his face. Ghostly nodded to Master Pu Hong and said, "Great Master, I heard from Fa Xiang that you're looking for me?" Master Pu Hong asked, "Yes, but I heard that Benefactor Zhang also has something to discuss with me." Ghostly pondered for a moment, nodded and said, "Yes, in fact, it is not a big deal. The main thing is that I have disturbed you for many days. Now that my injuries are almost healed, I dare not continue to disturb you." Master Pu Hong smiled and said, "What are you saying, Benefactor Zhang?" Ghostly shook his head and said, "That day at the foot of Mount Qingyun, the Great Master has saved my life. Since then, here, the Great Master has helped me untie the knot in my heart. I am very grateful. But after all, I am a member of the demon sect. If this continues, it will hurt your temple's reputation." Master Pu Hong said seriously, "Benefactor Zhang, there is something that I don't know if I should say." Ghostly said, "Please speak." Master Pu Hong nodded and said, "Since it is so, forgive me for speaking frankly. Looking at Benefactor Zhang's complexion, you are definitely not an evil person. Falling into the demon path is fate. It is not Benefactor Zhang's fault. Moreover, Benefactor Zhang and Puji Shidi have such a fate. You have fate with my Buddha and Tianyin Temple. As long as Benefactor Zhang is willing to turn back and be saved, Tianyin Temple will do its best to protect you. Not to mention Qinyan's sect. Even if the world's righteous sects come together, my temple will not be afraid. Buddha said, to save people once is a supreme merit. Since benefactor Zhang is a person of fate, why not let go of the burden of the secular world and obtain this peace and freedom? Wouldn't that be good? After that, he looked at Ghost Li with an earnest expression. Ghost Li did not expect Master Pu Hong to say such words. For a moment he was stunned. These days in Tian'an Temple, his state of mind was completely different from the past. It was peaceful and comfortable. With his deep heart, he very much liked this. But he was such a man. In the end, there were still things that he could not let go of. He was silent for a long time, then slowly raised his head, deeply bowed to Master Pu Hong, and said, I know that Master is sincere to me. You want to enlighten me, but I am a man of the secular world. I rise and fall with the waves. In that secular world, there are countless concerns, but I cannot let go. Master's good intentions. Forgive me for not being able to accept. After that, he sighed, turned and walked away, but Master Pu Hong opened his mouth and said, Benefactor Zhang, take care. Ghost Li said, Master, is there anything else? Master Pu Hong's face flashed a trace of pondering, slowly said, Benefactor Zhang's heart is like a rock. I dare not force you. But if Benefactor Zhang is willing, my temple has a request. I hope Benefactor Zhang can fulfill it. Ghost Li was slightly surprised, said, What is it? Master Feng Zhang can say it. Master Pu Hong looked at him and said, In the past, junior brother Puji fell into such a situation, although it was self-inflicted and unforgivable. But the root of the matter, the great evil devouring blood bead, cannot escape responsibility. Now that junior brother Puji has passed away, but this evil thing is still on Benefactor Zhang's body, harming young Benefactor. Ghost Li was silent for a moment, said, Master means. Master Pu Hong put his hands together and said, Young Benefactor Zhang does not have to worry. I have no other evil intentions. It is just that this devouring blood bead contains a fierce evil spirit, harming others and oneself. After junior brother Puji passed away, I have been in pain for more than 10 years, but I have not thought of this, and have been pitted by the heavens. I have thought of a way to restrain the evil spirit of this devouring blood bead. I wonder if young Benefactor Zhang is willing to try. Ghost Li's face changed color, although the devouring blood bead's power is infinite. But the evil spirit of this devouring blood bead has made him suffer so much, even his temperament has gradually changed. Sometimes he would think of Puji's original situation, thinking of what if he was also controlled by this evil spirit. He could not help but break out in a cold sweat. But this matter naturally cannot be told to outsiders. Although he was worried, he did not have a good solution. Unexpectedly, today he suddenly heard Master Pu Hong say such words. It hit the most worried part of his heart. Ghost Li thought for a long time, then slowly said, Master Feng Zhang unexpectedly has such a good solution. I wonder how to deal with it. Master Pu Hong's face was solemn, said, This method is actually very simple. To put it bluntly, it is just using the power of Buddha, boundless compassion, to degrade all the evil spirits of this world. In the back mountain of my Sound of Heaven temple there is a wordless jade wall. It is more than 7 feet high, smooth like jade. Legend has it that the ancestors of Sound of Heaven temple were enlightened under the wordless jade wall, and thus created my Sound of Heaven temple. Ghost Li frowned. He did not understand what this has to do with the evil spirit of the devouring blood bead, only to hear Master Pu Hong continue. That area is the most solemn and auspicious place in my Shumi mountain range. As long as young Benefactor Zhang meditates there for a period of time, this old monk will lead a group of monks to form a diamond ring array around the jade wall, so that the auspicious chi will flourish. Perhaps it will be able to suppress the evil spirit of the devouring blood bead that is eroding young Benefactor Zhang's body. Ghost Li's body trembled. He did not expect Master Pu Hong's vision to be so unique. He did not know when he saw the chaotic scene in his body. He thought for a moment, then resolutely said, Master's kindness, this one understands. Since this is the case, this one will sit under the wordless jade wall for a few days. But after this one will say goodbye. Master Pu Hong put his palms together, nodded, and said with a smile, Benefactor Zhang can rest assured, our temple will not dare to stop Benefactor Zhang. Ghost Li nodded, turned around and walked out. Master Puhong looked at his back disappearing, sighed, and said to himself, "Shitty, your spirit in heaven, you should bless this child, according to Puhong Shangren." The wordless jade wall was located at the back of Shumi Mountain. Ghostly also thought that it would be easy to find. Unexpectedly, when he had made proper preparations that day, he followed F.A. Xiong and F.A. Shan, who had come to lead the way, to the back of the mountain. After walking for more than an hour, he still did not see any trace of it. Ghostly was a little surprised, but he didn't say anything. F.A. Xiong, on the other hand, was attentive and thoughtful. Seeing the surprise on Ghostly's face, he guessed something and smiled. "Benefactor Zhang, are you wondering why this wordless jade wall is so far away?" Since Ghostly was asked, he did not hide it, and said, "Dare I ask Shitty, where is this wordless jade wall, and how did it come to be?" F.A. Xiong laughed as he walked. "It's a long story. When the wordless jade wall appeared, naturally no one knows, only that 1,000 years ago, when the founder of the Sound of Heaven Temple was still a monk, he wandered around, and one day, for some reason, he mistakenly entered the mountains of Shumi Mountain, lost his way, and could no longer go out. In desperation, the ancestral master wandered around the mountain forest. It was also due to his innate affinity with Buddhism that he saw a stone wall that was as smooth as jade. At that time, the founder was already unable to endure the hunger and thirst and was very tired, so he rested under the jade wall. F.A. Xiong paused for a moment. Ghostly could not help but ask, "Oh, then what happened?" In front of F.A. Xiong, there was a fork in a mountain path. F.A. Xiong led to the left, but took Ghostly to a downhill road and at the same time said, "Legend has it that the founder sat under the wordless jade wall for 3 days and 3 nights. And for some reason, from the initial hunger and thirst, he gradually calmed down and entered the perfect state of Buddhism. 3 days later, he actually comprehended Buddhism under the wordless jade wall." In addition, legend has it that F.A. Xiong turned his head and gave a mysterious smile to Gue Li, saying, "It is even more rumored that it was under the wordless jade wall that the founder actually comprehended the supreme, true technique of our Tianyin Temple, the great Brahma Prajna, thus establishing the position of the Tianyin Temple in the world of cultivation." Ghostly was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. He felt that this legend of the founder of the Sound of Heaven Temple was really funny. There were many untruths in it, and it was somewhat absurd. Originally, he had some expectations for Puhong, but now listening to F.A. Xiong's story like it was a story, it made him somewhat disheartened, and he could not help but secretly sigh. Chapter 350. F.A. Xiong was attentive, saw the changes in Ghost Li's expression, only smiled and led the way, did not speak. As for the tall monk Fashion who was following behind them, he had always been quiet and also did not speak. The three of them followed the mountain path for another half an hour, moving forward in the twists and turns between the lofty mountains and precipitous ridges. Unknowingly, they had already left Tianyin Temple far behind, could not be seen anymore. Ghostly did not expect the mountain behind Tianyin Temple to be so much bigger than what he had imagined. The peaks and ridges were emerald green. The mountain breeze blew gently. Along the way there were strange rocks, strange of every description, where there were cliffs and waterfalls descending from the sky, rumbling like a jade belt. Along the way, he felt his mind was broadened. Looking at the beautiful scenery around him, he did not feel bored anymore. Suddenly he heard F.A. Xiong said, "It is just ahead." Ghostly was shocked, looked ahead, but it was still a winding mountain path. One side of the road was a dense forest, the other side was weeds and brambles. 3 chi ahead was a cliff. Where was the 7 zhang tall wordless jade wall that they mentioned? "May I ask, senior brother, where is this jade wall?" F.A. Xiong smiled, walked a few steps forward, came to that cliff, turned back and said, "It is here." Ghostly walked to his side, stood on the cliff, looked up. Below the cliff was a mist pervading, like waves rolling, surging unceasingly. It looked like a valley. And indistinctly there were indistinct mountain figures, but they were all at a very far place. Ghostly concentrated and pondered, turned to F.A. Xiong and said, "Don't tell me it is in this valley." F.A. Xiong smiled and said, "It is under our feet." Ghostly was stunned. F.A. Xiong already smiled and said, "Let's go down." Speaking, Ephasion leapt down. Fashion also followed. Ghostly stood on the cliff, pondered for a moment, and also leapt down. The soul-absorbing stick in a mist glimmered with dark green light, slowly enveloped Ghostly, protected him, and slowly descended. The mist here seemed strange. It seemed thick, but not thick, like silk tangled together. No matter how the mountain breeze blew, it did not seem to disperse. In the process of falling, Ghostly's attention was focused on the mountain wall, but all he could see was a sheet of white mist, and he could not see anything. He was bewildered and activated the soul-absorbing stick, moved closer to the mountain wall. Patches of mist like clouds dispersed, slid out to both sides in front of his eyes. While he was concentrating, suddenly, he saw a figure appearing in front of him. Ghostly's heart shook, quickly stopped, and looked over. This shock was no small matter. He saw that in front of him, there was another Ghostly who looked exactly like him, looking at him with a face of shock. That person's gaze was deep, and his face actually had an ancient look. He was also holding a soul-devouring magic stick in his hand. Just when Ghostly was in shock, suddenly a Sanskrit chant was heard from beyond the heavens, like a heavy bell and big drum, resounded heavily beside his ears. Along with this Sanskrit chant, a solemn power instantly soared from the unknown world beneath his feet, like a huge wave piercing through the sky. The surrounding fog immediately swept over, engulfing the figure and disappearing. Ghostly felt a pain in his heart. The icy cold energy in his body did not activate itself, as if it was extremely repulsive towards this Buddhist energy, automatically resisted. In Ghostly's shock, he also felt that other than the sinister orb evil energy in his body stirring. It seemed to be affected by the Buddhist energy here. The great Brahmin wisdom that he cultivated was also unwilling to submit. Leapt up, seemed to have the intention to fight it out with the sinister orb evil energy. It had not even started, and there was such a huge change in his body. The energy of the realm here was really unimaginable. Ghostly was shocked. For a moment he forgot about the strange figure in the mist, only urged his own cultivation, protected his heart arteries, and slowly descended. Very quickly, the mist gradually thinned. The scenery below his feet immediately became clear. It was a small stone platform, extremely smooth, 3 zhang's perimeter, sparse trees, several Tian, temple monks sitting around it. Looking at the positions of these monks, some far, some near, there was no order, but there seemed to be a secret, faint Buddhist energy circulating within, indistinctly forming a formation. Ghostly looked carefully again, suddenly felt that it looked familiar. After thinking carefully, he recalled that it was a simple and unadorned character, looked like Buddhist incantations. Ghostly very quickly landed on the ground, looked around. Ephasion and Fashion were already sitting among the monks, silently putting their palms together, lowering their eyes and eyebrows, not looking at him again. And at the head of the monks, it was Tian Temple Abbot Puhong Master. Sitting on his left, Ghostly had seen him before. It was Pufong Divine Monk who displayed his prowess on Qingyan Hill. Instead, sitting on Puhong Master's right was a monk. He looked rather strange. Ghostly had never seen him before, but looking at his withered face, his complexion sallow, as if he was about to die, and his aged appearance far surpassed Puhong Master. Just that he did not know who this was, but to be able to sit on the same level as Pufong, the 2 great divine monks. Obviously, he was also an outstanding figure in Tianyin Temple. Ghostly did not speak much, bowed his head to Puhong Master. Puhong Master put his palms together and returned the greeting, smiled, and said, "Young patron is here." Ghostly nodded and said, "Yes, but what does Abbot Master want me to do?" Puhong Master pointed to that platform, said, "Nothing else. Young patron only needs to sit on that stone platform, meditate, and sit for a few days." Ghostly nodded, turned back and glanced at that stone platform, and then looked around. Only saw the thick mist above his head. Where was the legendary wordless jade wall? He couldn't help but ask, "May I ask, Abbot Master, where is that wordless jade wall?" Puhong Master smiled and said, "After a while, young patron will be able to see it." Ghostly was surprised, nodded his head, turned around, and was about to sit on that stone platform. Suddenly a sharp whistle was heard indistinctly in the sky. It was the sound of the wind. It was the howl of the beast, piercing through the clouds and mist, following which a beam of dazzling light actually tore a crack in the thick mist, shot down, shone on a Ghostly. Ghostly took a step back, looked up. Strange rumbling sounds were heard in the valley, like rolling thunder. That piece of thick fog sea suddenly started to ripple. From the initial gentle surging turned into huge waves. The waves undulated, and then more and more cracks appeared. The thick fog also became thinner and thinner. Beams after beams of light. Beams after beams of light shone out. Facing this strange phenomenon, Ghostly stared for a long time. The thick mist finally dispersed. Light shone down. In that instant, heaven and earth was filled with dazzling light, making everyone unable to look at it. After a while, it then gradually calmed down. When Ghostly opened his eyes again, his body shook. He saw the legendary wordless jade wall. Just in front of him, behind that small stone platform, below the cliff, a precipice like a mirror, hung straight down, more than 7 zhongs high, more than 4 zhongs wide. The mountain wall material seemed like jade, but not jade, extremely smooth, reflecting the beautiful scenery of heaven and earth. The mountains near and far were all in this jade wall. And Ghostly and the Tian temple monks under this precipice were as insignificant as ants. Compared to the creation of heaven and earth, humans were so insignificant. Ghostly was silent. After a long time, he heaved a sigh. Without a word, walked to that platform and sat cross-legged. He did not look at the people around him, breathed deeply, and then closed his eyes, just sat there motionlessly. Puhong Master studied Ghostly for a long time, turned his head and glanced at the monks behind him, nodded his head. Dozens of Tian temple monks, including Puhong Master, Pufong Divine Monk, and that mysterious old monk beside Puhong Master, Fei Xiang, Fashion, etc., put their palms together and chanted. Dozens of faint golden lights slowly floated up. Indistinct Sanskrit sounds seemed to be heard from the horizon. Suddenly, the golden light shone brightly. In the strange formation that the monks were sitting on, the golden light flowed and the Buddha's chi was solemn. The golden light emitted by the monks became more and more dazzling. After a while, a deafening roar was heard and a huge golden Buddha mantra appeared on the formation and slowly rose. The Sanskrit chanting became louder and louder, heaven and earth in solemnity. That golden Buddha word rose higher and higher, slowly reached the mid-air and stood erect. Under the illumination of the sunlight, it became more and more difficult to look at. As if triggered by the Buddhist mantra, on that precipice, the originally smooth jade wall slowly revealed the reflection of the Buddhist character. However, it was not the same as an ordinary mirror. Instead, from a small dot, it gradually grew bigger, gradually emitting golden light, slowly revealing the appearance of the Buddhist character. And when the reflection on the wordless jade wall grew bigger, the Buddhist mantra in the air seemed to dim a little. Very quickly, the Buddhist mantra in the wordless jade wall grew so big that it almost surpassed the real Buddhist character in midair. At this moment, the entire wordless jade wall was shining with a golden light. It was dazzling, accompanied by bursts of Sanskrit sounds. Suddenly, a faint golden Buddha light seeped out from the jade wall, slowly shot out, enveloping Ghostly, who was sitting peacefully. Ghostly's body moved a little. His face revealed a little pain, but he did not open his eyes and endured it. Very soon, the pain on his face disappeared. He sat quietly and did not move. The Buddha light that shot out from the wordless jade wall was faint. There was no change. Only the golden light slowly flashed, an indescribable solemnity. And the surrounding Tian temple monks also did not change their expressions, quietly chanting. The light on their formation also slowly circulated, supporting that Buddha incantation in the sky. Time passed, just like that quietly passed 3 days later. That Buddha incantation on the wordless jade wall still did not show any signs of weakening. The faint Buddha light that shot out still enveloped Ghostly's body. Ghostly's face was calm, as if these 3 days to him, there was no change at all, still the same as when he first arrived 3 days ago. Instead, the surrounding Puhong Master and the rest of the Tian temple monks, although there was no change in the formation, but everyone's faces showed faint exhaustion. Puhong Master slowly opened his eyes from his meditative state, looked at Ghostly, who was still sitting peacefully, after a long while quietly sighed and said, foolish child, in the end still cannot let it go." After speaking, he gently shook his head, sighed incessantly. Pufong divine monk sitting on his left indifferently said, "We have worked so hard, set up the Buddhist subduing evil formation. One is to help him detoxify the sinister orb's vicious energy. More importantly, is to resolve his inner demon. But his heart door is tightly locked, the inner demon difficult to get rid of, even if the sinister orb's vicious energy is resolved. Who knows if in the future he will still turn into a demon? What we are doing today, I'm afraid we are helping the evildoer." Puhong Master frowned. His face darkened, said, "Junior brother, this young man has deep ties with our Tianyin temple, no matter what we cannot easily give up. Why do you say so?" Pufong's countenance changed, put his palms together and said, "Senior brother is right. It is not that I have any prejudice against this young man. It is just that when we were separated by life and death, my heart is grieved. I really do not wish to see him walk on the evil path again." Junior brother spoke indiscreetly. "Senior brother, please punish me." Puhong Master's face softened, said, "How can I not have the same thoughts as you? If not, I would not have set up this subduing evil formation, with the intention to use the Buddhist sect true way to enlighten him. But under this wordless jade wall, he seemed to also." Halfway through his words, suddenly a loud sound came out of nowhere in the originally quiet and serene and solemn valley. The entire wordless jade wall actually trembled slightly. Immediately, the Buddhist incantations in the air and the wordless jade wall were on the verge of collapse. Puhong Master and the rest of the Tianyin temple monks turned pale with fright. For a moment aghast, quickly activated the true way. Unexpectedly, Ghost Li's face suddenly revealed a pained expression. The soul-absorbing stick, which had been suppressed by the Buddhist power for the past 3 days, suddenly lit up. A gush of black energy instantly covered his face. Puhong Master did not expect the sinister orb's evil energy to be so tenacious. After 3 days and nights of suppression, it still had the strength to resist, was about to call for the rest to support the formation again. Ghostly could not bear it any longer. Made a long howl, leapt up. The Buddhist incantations in the air suddenly dispersed. Ghostly howled to the sky in the incantations, like a madman. At the same time, he turned back to look at the wordless jade wall. Lines of dark red light appeared in the wordless jade wall. Golden light and red light, fighting incessantly. Just when the lights were flashing chaotically, the strange phenomenon appeared. A sudden clap of thunder sounded in the horizon. The sky dimmed down. Wind and clouds rolled in from all directions. On the smooth jade wall of the wordless jade wall, from top to bottom, little by little, as if deeply engraved, a row of big words appeared. Other than that, there were even countless golden, ancient, unintelligible words like boiling, flickering, and leaping between the golden and red light, dazzling one's eyes. And that row of big words was clear. It was heaven and earth heartless, treating all living beings as straw dogs. Chapter 351. On that wordless jade wall, innumerable golden ancient characters appeared. Such a strange thing. Even Puhong Master below, all of the Tianyin temple monks had never seen it before. On that jade wall, at times propitious air rose, at times dark red flashed. The solemn golden light mixed with a strange, unfathomable red light gave one a feeling of suffocation. Ghostly in the air, faced the sky and made a long howl, looking like he was in extreme pain. His gaze then shifted to that wordless jade wall, watching the innumerable characters writhing and swaying, looking carefully. Around his body, the strange, soul-devouring light became brighter and brighter. The evil power emitted from his body also became stronger and stronger. Even the Tianyin temple monks on the ground felt an unprecedented cold air transmitted from Ghostly in the air, enveloping their surroundings. After these 3 days and 3 nights of the Buddhist formations tempering, the sinister orb evil power not only did not weaken, instead it seemed to be completely stimulated, unprecedentedly powerful. Puhong Master looked anxious. At this juncture where the situation was changing, his expression was like the horizons changing unceasingly, looking indecisive. Pufong instead looked anxious. He looked at Ghostly, who was bathed in the dark green light in the sky. Frowning tightly, loudly shouted to Puhong Master, "Senior brother, what do we do now?" Puhong Master inhaled a long breath, resolutely said, "This person is Puji, junior brother's successor. It is also where his lifelong ambition lies. We must not save him. His words had just finished. Puhong Master shouted an order, again sat cross-legged, chanting Buddha. The Sanskrit chanting indistinctly started again, following which the Tian'in temple monks behind him saw the abbot casting a spell. One by one followed. The next moment, a solemn golden light again floated up from these Tian'in temple monks. Just that this time the golden Buddha light was different from the Buddhist formation that purified ghostly 3 days ago. In the solemn image, there was less compassion, more austere. On the other hand, Ghostly, who was in the air, did not seem to notice the golden light gradually rising from the ground and enveloping him. His attention right now was completely attracted by those flickering words on the wordless jade wall. Nobody would have thought, even those Tian'in temple monks under the wordless jade wall, even if they saw it with their own eyes, they would also not understand, on the wordless jade wall, what was flashing out on this Buddhist Holy Land's most revered and pure jade wall was the legendary evil sect classic, Tian Shu 4th volume. The heavenly Tao was boundless, and the affairs of the world were ever-changing. Who could predict it? Tian'in temple monks worshipped Buddha day and night, but were still unaware of this. Ghostly had been through many hardships. The vicissitudes of life, similarly, did not know. Just that right now, Ghostly, how could he think so much? In his eyes, he was almost instinctively attracted by those flickering words. Those pulsating words were impressively the various broken parts of his arduous self-cultivation of Tian Shu, unfolding before his eyes, like a pedestrian facing the numerous steep cliffs and precipices on the road ahead. At the moment when he was at a dead end, suddenly there was a path on the cliff, a torrent crossing a bridge. What kind of joyous state was this? How could he still be distracted? For a moment, the many difficult and obscure parts of his past cultivation seemed to be suddenly enlightened, one by one unfolded. Since 10 years ago, when he saw the first volume of the Heavenly Tomes in the ancient Cave of Fangs and the Blood-Drop Cave of Kong Sing Mountain, 10 years of time had passed like the tide. This man stood between the wind and the clouds. For the first time, he felt the feeling of breathing with the heaven and earth, but also forgetting everything. Panting deeply. From head to toe, every part of his body felt like it was about to explode. Innumerable strange whistling noises surrounded him. The various energies in his body seemed to be boiling, like huge waves, all surging violently. The sinister orb's evil power was icy cold. The inferno mirror's pure yang energy was scorching hot. Taiji Xian Qing Wei was peaceful and upright, the great Brahman wisdom solemn like a mountain. There was also from every part of his body, the 3 volumes of Tian Shu that Ghostly had cultivated in the past. The energy was even more abundant. Heaven and earth changed, creation mysterious. Under the dark clouds, the strange light emitted by that figure in the air instead became brighter and brighter under the darkening sky, directly having the power to defy heaven. Thunder rumbled in the horizon. Lightning started to scuttle in the clouds, as if heaven's heart was already enraged. In the clouds, a violent wind blew. The clouds slowly started to rotate. Just above Ghostly, a huge whirlpool gradually appeared. And Ghostly, his eyes were still attracted to the wordless jade wall, oblivious to what was happening around him. And at this moment, the Sanskrit chanting from the ground intensified. Solemn golden light shot up to the sky, immediately enveloping Ghostly in it. This golden light was extremely intense, gathered the powers of several Tian'in temple monks. How could it be ordinary? Immediately it suppressed the evil light emitted from Ghostly's body, enveloped him. The golden light rose after enveloping Ghostly. The might of the thunder and lightning in the horizon seemed to be restrained, immediately weakened. That strange huge vortex, which was slowly forming in the sky, also seemed to have the tendency to dissipate. Puhong Master gazed at the firmament, slowly heaved a sigh of relief, suddenly heard that Ganxing, old monk beside him, coldly said, "This person's cultivation actually triggered heaven punishmently lay. It can be seen that the evil energy is so strong, even heaven cannot tolerate it. Abbot risked everything to save him. I'm afraid it might not be right." Puhong Master's countenance changed, turned and looked at him. That Ganxing, old monk, coldly stared at him. Puhong Master for a moment was speechless. Actually, with Puhong Master's level of cultivation, how could he not feel the waves of strange, murderous evil energy from Ghostly? It was definitely not good faction skills. What he did today, it was really hard to say if it was right or not. Just that as long as he thought of his Puji junior brother, who passed away with hatred, and Ghost Li's great mercy towards Puji's remains a few days ago, the deeply moved Puhong Master could not abandon him. Right now, Puhong Master was silent. After a long while he was about to speak, suddenly a commotion was heard beside him. Quite a number of people exclaimed softly. At the same time, a strange aura came from the formation. There seemed to be a change. He quickly looked up. Immediately his face changed. Under the suppression and protection of the Buddhist formation, which the Tian Temple monks jointly conjured, the evil energy on Ghost Li's body had been forcibly suppressed, completely wrapped up in the golden formation. That mysterious storm in the horizon could not find its target, was also slowly dissipating. Unexpectedly at this moment, the rays of light on Ghost Li's body, which were suppressed to a weak state, suddenly brightened up again, and the turbulent aura was even stronger than before. Rumble! A sudden clap of thunder exploded in the sky. The gale raged, and the thunder, Ghost Li once again howled to the sky, his entire body glowing green, red, gold, scarlet circulated incessantly, finally slowly converged and merged, transformed into the simplest black and white energies. Just that this black and white energies were also rather strange. Sometimes completely white, sometimes completely black, changing unpredictably, but the indistinct strength was felt by all of the Tian Temple monks. In the air, the golden formation which condensed the powers of several Tian Temple monks actually could not withstand the impact of Ghost Li's newborn true way, slowly weakened. At the same time, the storm in the sky billowed. An enormous vortex appeared again, and this time its speed was even faster than before, rapidly taking shape right above Ghost Li. When one looked up from the ground, one could see bolts of lightning flashing about madly within the vortex of clouds while thunder rumbled. There were even peerlessly strange hissing sounds coming from within, and it was like the savage mouth of the heavens that intended to swallow someone whole. On the ground, most of the monks' faces showed pain. Maintaining the golden formation was becoming more and more strenuous. Right now, not only Ghost Li was resisting the golden light from the formation, but in the sky, inside that mysterious vortex, there was also an irresistible force descending from the sky, tightly clashing against the golden formation. The golden formation, which was being attacked from the front and back. The light swiftly weakened. Puhong Master and the rest were all shocked, and at this moment, thunder rumbled in the horizon. From that incessantly spinning, deep in the bottomless vortex, a thick electric ray struck down from the firmament, struck onto the golden formation. The deafening sound cracked. Puhong Master and the rest of the Tian Temple monks' bodies shook greatly. Those monks with slightly lower cultivation all turned red. Some had already spat out blood. The golden formation wavered and flickered and finally dispersed, disappearing into nothingness. Puhong Master felt vexed. As the person in charge of the formation, he received the greatest shock, but right now his mind was in the sky. In his anxiety, he actually stood up. Chapter 352. Since the golden light formation had dispersed, Ghost Li was no longer suppressed. The pressure on his body instantly dissipated, but he felt his body relaxed. The new vitality in his body circulated unceasingly, growing and multiplying unceasingly, extremely carefree. However, before he could do anything, he, who had disturbed the will of the heavens, could only see that in the depths of the dark clouds in the sky, amidst the rumbling thunder, it was as if a pillar of light was descending from the sky. It was so powerful that it seemed as if it wanted to pierce through the heavens and the earth, and it came crashing down towards him. Wherever it passed, it was blazing fiercely. Sizzling sounds were heard incessantly around the light pillar. Not knowing if it was because the temperature was too high, it actually melted everything around it. And what Ghost Li was facing was the heaven and earth's might, unavoidable, nowhere to hide. Seeing that Ghost Li was about to be struck by this enormous light pillar, smashed into pieces, Puhong Master and the rest of the monks could not bear to watch. One by one closed their eyes and turned away. Puhong Master was even more distressed. No matter what he could not understand, he originally had good intentions to enlighten Ghost Li, hoping to resolve the evil energy in his body. Why would it become like this, triggering the heaven punishment severe thunder which had not been seen for thousands of years, only existed in legends? Could it be heaven really could not tolerate this man? The light pillar arrived in a blink. Before it reached him, Ghostly's face was pale. In the raging wind, he opened his mouth to cry out, but no sound came out, drowned in the heaven and earth's might. But he was shrouded by the heaven and earth's might. The 7 apertures on his face were bleeding, his face mournful and despairing. Even the soul-devouring stick which had always loyally protected him, right now facing the heaven punishment, was suppressed until it lost its luster. Everything seemed to be ending. The might of the heaven, a faint elegy, seemed to be heard, reverberating in the horizon. Suddenly, the wordless jade wall behind him, which was gradually dimming, seemed to sense something. The innumerable flickering words once again lit up, especially those 9 big words in the middle. Heaven and earth heartless, treating all living things as straw dogs, emitted a glaring and dazzling light. Flashing up, looking at that momentum, indistinctly carried a trace of insufferably arrogant air. Even in the face of the heavens that countless people prostrated themselves in worship, the light on the jade wall did not retreat in the slightest, as if it could never be defeated. The light on the wordless jade wall instantly became extremely bright, as if the most brilliant spark had been ignited, and no one could see the scene within. That crazy light instantly covered the sky and covered the earth as it rushed over from the bottom to the top. It completely covered Ghost Lee's entire body, and at the same time, there was even an incomparably huge light rushed up to the sky. That endless aura actually directly rushed towards that mysterious huge vortex in the horizon. Boom, boom, boom. In the firmament of the sky, deafening thunder sounds. Each sound seemed to have the power to split the sky, as if enraged in that instant. That powerful heaven punishment light pillar moved a little, left Ghost Lee's body, struck onto that unyielding brilliance that shot up to the sky from the wordless jade wall. The 2 blazing pillars of light collided with each other, causing the ground and mountains to tremble. Countless boulders and cliffs to crack. Thunder rumbled and tens of thousands of beasts howled. It was like the end of the world. Between heaven and earth, there was a dazzling brilliance that could not be looked at directly. Heaven and earth froze as if at that moment. On the wordless jade wall, the originally smooth mirror-like stone wall, cracking sounds rang out. From the middle of the stone wall, a crisp sound. A small hole cracked open, following which numerous fine cracks extended out from the center in all directions, becoming bigger and bigger. Finally, in the incessant screeches, a deafening sound, this huge mountain wall rocks flew away, collapsed. In the horizon, the huge light pillars slowly dispersed. The gloomy black clouds seemed to have found an outlet. The violent winds gradually ceased. The thunder sounds also slowly stopped. Following which, heaven and earth seemed to return to tranquility. The black clouds slowly dispersed. That peaceful sky gradually brightened up. A figure slowly landed from the midair. It was ghostly, just that right now his face was covered with blood. Unconscious and protecting his body was a faint mysterious light. After his body landed, it swayed a few times, eventually dispersed gently. Not a trace of him was left. The Tianyin temple monks stared dumbstruck at the dilapidated, wordless jade wall, looked at Ghostly, who had luckily escaped from the heaven punishment, unable to speak a word. This sleep seemed to be another long slumber. As if in this, there were many people walking to and fro, very busy, and there were people talking beside him, the voices sometimes loud and sometimes soft. It seemed like sometimes there were even people quarreling. But most of the time it was still quiet, in the calm silence. Not knowing how long he had slept, indistinctly he felt something, but in the end he did not wake up. Perhaps this kind of deep slumber was actually the hope in the depths of his heart. Footsteps were heard outside the door. Fei-xiang, who was in the meditation room, glanced out, quickly stood up, put his palms together, and bowed to Pu-hong Master, who was walking in. Pu-hong Master nodded, glanced at Ghostly, who was still sleeping on the meditation bed, quietly said, "Is he all right?" Fei-xiang nodded and said, Ever since that day, Zhang Patron has been unconscious like this. Just that his breathing is gentle. There are no abnormalities, and there are no other injuries on his body. By right, he should have woken up long ago, but for some reason, he is still unconscious like this. Puhong Master pondered for a moment, said, he was lucky to escape from the heaven punishment Li lay. This is already extremely lucky. Heaven punishment is a rare heaven's might. I didn't expect it to happen to him. Don't tell me. He is really an evildoer that even the heavens cannot tolerate? Fa Xiang's countenance changed, quietly glanced at Puhong Master. Puhong Master's face was solemn, but there was no other unusual expression. Then he quietly calmed down, quietly said, Teacher, is it that the few teacher uncles are arguing with you again? Puhong Master gave a bitter laugh, but did not speak. Fa Xiang was silent. After a long while, Puhong Master unhurriedly said, the wordless jade wall is our Tian'in Temple's most precious treasure, and even more a Buddhist relic passed down by our founder. This time it was destroyed by heaven punishment. It was all because of my own selfishness. I've already decided that after this patron Zhang wakes up, I will resign from the abbot position and from then on face the wall to comprehend Buddhism, to atone for my sins. Fa Xiang's countenance changed greatly, said in shock, Teacher, how can you say that? This is not your fault. Puhong Master shook his head, said, your teacher uncles are right. I am grateful to Patron Zhang for resolving Puji Junior Brother's vengeful energy, and so rashly made a rash decision, overestimating my own abilities, and wanted to use the Buddhist Holy Land's Buddhism to enlighten him. Because of this, I attracted heaven punishment, destroyed the jade wall. It is really my sin. Just that. Speaking till here, he instead smiled, spoke to Fa Xiang, just that I have never regretted it. Do you know why? Fa Xiang silently shook his head. Puhong Master smiled and said, that day, heaven punishment struck down. This patron Zhang originally had no chance of survival, but the wordless jade wall took it on its own and saved this young patron. Although the reason for this, we all do not know, but the jade wall is psychic. There must be a reason for not wanting to see this patron Zhang die under heaven punishment. Therefore it did so. Since the jade wall is like this, it can be seen that what I did was not wrong. So although it is my fault to destroy the jade wall, I also intend to ask for forgiveness, but in my heart, I do not regret it at all. Fa Xiang clenched his teeth, raised his head and called out, Teacher. Puhong Master patted his shoulder, smiled and consoled him, walked to Ghost Li's bed, looked at him carefully, nodded his head and said, seems like his complexion is much better. If there are no accidents, I expect he will wake up in these few days. You must take good care of him. Fa Xiang placed his palms together, said, Teacher, don't worry. Puhong Master nodded, glanced at Ghost Li again, turned, and was about to walk out. Just at the moment when he was about to step out of the room, suddenly, Ghost Li's body moved, a low moan coming from his mouth. Fa Xiang's body shook, happily said, Teacher, he seems to be awake. Puhong Master was overjoyed, quickly walked over and sat beside Ghost Li's bed. Under the gaze of the teacher and disciple, Ghost Li's eyes moved slightly, finally slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 353. Just like the past countless days, the melodious morning bell rang again, reverberating in the Mount Meru mountain range, reverberating in the mist and mountain breeze. It had passed through countless years of time and would still reverberate day after day in the future. Standing in the morning light, Ghost Li clasped his hands behind his back, listening attentively. He closed his eyes slightly, as if that melodious bell sound reverberated, to savor it carefully. Right now, Ghost Li, for some reason, his appearance did not change, but he looked like a different person. From his bearing and demeanor, compared to the past, there was more calmness, less viciousness. Or maybe it was really those Buddhist formations that had taken effect? This question, among the Tian'in Temple monks, after Ghost Li woke up, many of them had this question in their hearts. The day before yesterday, after Ghost Li woke up again, Puhong Master and the rest carefully examined him. There were no other major injuries. Even the slight tremors from the heavy blows did not seem to exist on Ghost Li's body. Puhong Master was overjoyed, As a precaution, he asked Ghostly to stay in Tian Temple for a few more days. Ghostly did not decline, stayed in Tian Temple. These few days, Ghostly was even more reticent than usual towards someone like him who had angered the heaven and sent down the punishment. The Tian'in Temple monks mostly avoided him. Only Puhong Master and Fa Xiang did not have any scruples, often came over to visit him. And Ghostly himself did not seem to notice the outside world, did not step out of the house. Only when a morning bell and evening drum sounded, he would go to the small courtyard, quietly listen. Dong, the last bell sound, with an unceasing lingering sound, reverberated above Tian'in Temple for a long time, finally turned silent. Ghostly then slowly opened his eyes. Bathing in Tian'in Temple's morning breeze, the energy in his body under his quiet exterior was surging, as if his entire person was about to fly up. The Tian'in Temple monks would not know, but Ghostly himself understood in his heart. In that wordless jade wall, what unexpectedly appeared was the legendary evil sect classic Tianshu 4th volume. Others might not understand, but he was the only person in this world who had cultivated Tianshu first 3 volumes. With one look, he could tell that it was the crucial 4th volume that he had been yearning for day and night on his cultivation journey. In his past cultivation, countless of seemingly indestructible, insurmountable problems. Right now, he had already grasped the crux placed before him. It was almost a broad road, a smooth and boundless road. Even in his heart, he had this feeling, if he continued on this road, it would definitely be very smooth for him. Maybe he could even peek into some realms that he did not dare to hope for in the past. Even when he was looking at his past emotions, at the human affairs before him, he also had a feeling of detachment. He could not help but feel a sense of detachment. But for some reason, in his heart, in such a great situation, he still felt a faint sense of loss, but he didn't know how to describe it. The faintly discernible thought that something was amiss was still lingering in his mind. Ghostly stood there for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking, and no one came in to disturb him. Until he suddenly turned, for the first time in several days. He walked out of this small courtyard. When he left the courtyard, he did not turn back once. Following the steps under his feet, he unhurriedly walked. It was said that this path was once that monk, in order to spread Buddhism, made a great wish and used great powers to create it. Today, countless people were still walking on the path he created, but how many knew he had already turned into ashes? Walking on this path, the layers of stone steps were simple and unadorned. Stepping on it, the feeling of levelness was felt. A few days ago, after the unexpected battle that caused the sky to change color, the earth to shake and the mountains to shake, the temples and halls on Mount Meru were all damaged to varying degrees. Only this flat mountain path was not affected in the slightest. It was still firmly laid on the ground, allowing countless people to walk over its chest. Maybe, to the unpredictable heaven deities, this path also carried some special feelings? Ghostly did not know. He also did not want to know. He walked on this path, only silently recalling the past and old friends. In his memories, he slowly walked to little Tian'in Temple on Mount Meru. The door was ajar. This place was as tranquil as usual. Ghostly unhurriedly walked over. Behind the door, indistinctly voices were heard. He knocked on the door. The voices immediately disappeared. Then someone seemed bewildered, softly made a sound. The next moment, the door opened with a creak. Fa Xiang appeared behind the door. Seeing Ghostly, Fa Xiang revealed a smile. Ghostly nodded, said, "Abbot Masterin." Fa Xiang smiled and moved aside, said, "Here, please come in." Ghostly walked in, saw Puhong Master sitting cross-legged on the meditation bed, similarly smiling at him. Ghostly walked over to Puhong Master, bowed, said, "Abbot Master." Puhong Master looked at Ghostly's figure, his eyes from top to bottom, and finally at his feet, suddenly nodded, put his palms together and said, "Didn't expect in this short period of time. Patron skills have improved greatly. It is really worthy of congratulations." Ghostly's brows raised, did not speak. Fa Xiang was instead slightly surprised, carefully assessed Ghostly from the side. After a moment of silence, Ghostly slightly lowered his head to Puhong Master, said, "A few days ago, because of me, your esteemed temple's wordless jade wall was destroyed. I really feel uneasy. Puhong Master gently shook his head, indifferently said, just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Ghostly was slightly stunned, said, that wordless jade wall is your esteemed temple's treasure. Isn't it precious? Puhong Master put his palms together, said, the affairs of the world turn, all living beings are gone. Who knows what will happen after? Treasuring it today, who knows what will happen in the future? If patron has the heart, he pointed outside the window, said, there is a big stone on the right outside Little Tian Temple. Patron, go take a look. Maybe you will understand the Buddha's heart. Ghostly nodded, said yes. But I came here today is to bid farewell to Abbot Master. Puhong Master's face did not show any surprise, as if he had expected Ghostly would say that. He only nodded and said, if patron wishes to go, old monk does not dare to stop you. Just that before patron leaves, old monk has a few words I want to say to patron. Ghostly said, Master, please speak. Puhong Master said, patron in this period of time, faced with many calamities, but in the end was able to resolve them one by one. I see patron's heart seems to be enlightened. Not sure if it is? Ghostly pondered for a moment, nodded and said, Master is discerning. After surviving a calamity, I indeed have some feelings. Looking back on half my life, I have many feelings of regret. Puhong Master's eyes flashed, said, patron is a person of great wisdom. Since you have already seen through it, why not see through this worldly feelings and come under my Buddhist sect? With old monk's conjecture, what patron is thinking in your heart is only the word quiet. What do you think? Ghostly was silent. After a long time stood up, bowed to Puhong Master, indifferently said, Master, enlighten me. I am very grateful. Just that I may have some enlightenment in my heart, but it is not that I have seen through the worldly feelings. To me, the worldly feelings is what I cannot bear to part with. Puhong Master shook his head and said, Buddha said, form is emptiness. All things in the worldly world are like this, gratitude and grudges, love and enmity, beauties and enemies. It is all just the word form, trapping one's mind, disturbing one's peace. Patron, why must you be so stubborn? Ghostly looked up to the sky and breathed, laughed loudly, turned and left. In a clear voice he said, Master, you are wrong. Form is emptiness. That emptiness is also form. You want me to see through the worldly feelings, but how can I see through the worldly feelings? I am between heaven and earth. Gratitude and grudges, love and enmity is exactly my life's circumstances. You want me to see through peace, but how would you know, after seeing through it, will it still be me? His voice gradually deepened and finally disappeared. The man had already left the meditation room and was far away. Xiong was silent for a long time, said to Puhong Master, Master, you have enlightened him several times. A pity. Puhong Master indifferently said, his enlightenment and cultivation, in the future I'm afraid he will be the world's #1 figure. But such a figure, actually unable to see through his own heart's devil, in the future, it will depend on his own good fortune. Xiong lowered his head, placed his palms together, and chanted, in the end, did not speak. Ghostly left Little Tianyin Temple. When he walked out of the temple, he suddenly stopped again, paused for a moment, and turned to the right. After a few steps, he saw a huge rock half the height of a person lying on the ground. He walked to the rock and carefully looked at it. The rock was full of marks, but there was not a single word or sentence. There was also no trace of human chiseling. He did not know what mysteries this rock had. Ghostly frowned, pondered for a moment. Suddenly his eyes focused. His attention was attracted by a spot on the rock. This rock was mottled. Evidently, it had experienced countless years of wind blades and frost swords, riddled with scars, but at that spot, a picture could be seen indistinctly. Just that due to the passage of time, it was difficult to identify. Ghostly stretched his hand over, gently swept away the dust on the rock, carefully examined. After a long time, he then recognized that it was a shell shape, just that over the passage of time, it had already turned into stone, merged with the rock. And Ghostly then carefully examined the rock again, did not find anything else strange. His eyes again returned to that shell, Could it be that what Pu Hong Master wanted him to see was this ordinary shell? In it, what mystery was there? He recalled what Pu Hong Master said in his heart. His eyes looked at that shell, slowly brightened. Mount Meru towered high, within 1,000 miles. There was no sea or deep ocean, but this rock clearly was something from Mount Meru. Thousands of years ago, perhaps this place was a vast ocean. It was unknown. Chapter 354. A person's life, compared to the operation of heaven and earth, the vicissitudes of the world, was like a grain in the vast ocean, a mustard seed. Just that, he remained silent, turned and bowed towards that quiet little temple. When he turned his head back, his face was still indifferent. Where his robes waved, faint white light floated, his figure turned into light, flew up to the sky, gradually disappearing above the firmament. See through? Who can see through? The vicissitudes of the world. How can it be compared to the moment in my heart? That moment of faint light. Qingyan Hill, Big Bamboo Valley. The Qingyan battle had already passed for a period of time. After that, Reverend Daoxian, because of the Zhu Xian ancient sword matter, kept a close watch on the Big Bamboo Valley disciples for a period of time. But recently, because the Big Bamboo Valley disciples were very well behaved, the sect head also did not urge them much. Originally, in the Big Bamboo Valley disciples' hearts, although the matter this time was of great importance, but the way he handled it was really too excessive. But no matter what, after all they had not been disturbed for a long time, Big Bamboo Valley also gradually returned to its usual tranquility. Wudi, Hidaji, both of their injuries also gradually recovered. After Suru's examination, they were almost fully recovered. Both of them could walk freely, just that they could not do any heavy work. Therefore, according to the usual routine, while cleaning everyone's rooms, at the same time cleaning that secluded corner little junior brother's room, also continued. This day, Xavion and Du Baishu, both of them, again walked towards that room. Both of them chatted and laughed like in the past countless times, walked into that courtyard. But at this moment, suddenly, a gray shadow flashed past in that small courtyard which was supposed to be quiet. That gray shadow speed was extremely fast, but Xavion and Du Baishu almost saw it at the same time. Both of them were shocked, immediately put down the things they were doing and dashed forward. Just that in a blink, that gray shadow disappeared. Both of them searched the entire courtyard, even on the roof, but still did not find any trace of it. Standing in the courtyard, Xavion and Du Baishu looked at each other. Xavion frowned and said, "Don't tell me we saw wrongly?" Du Baishu tilted his head and thought for a while, was about to speak. Suddenly he was startled and quietly said, "To Shi Xiang, look over there." After speaking, his hand pointed behind Xavion. Xavion quickly turned around and looked, following the direction of Du Baishu's finger. In the room that was originally his junior brother's bedroom, the door was tightly shut, but the window beside the door, without knowing when, there was a small gap opened. In the past, no one lived here, so the windows were naturally tightly shut. Xavion and Du Baishu looked at each other, saw the uncertainty in each other's eyes. Song Darren composed himself and whispered, "Let's go in and take a look." Du Baishu, for some reason, became nervous. While nodding, he could not help but lowered his voice and said to Song Darren, "Big senior brother, don't tell me it's little junior brother." The corner of Xavion's eyes twitched. Obviously his thoughts were similar to Du Baishu, but even he himself felt afraid of this thought. Maybe if he really saw that little junior brother who was now a stranger, he also did not know how to face him. His hand, when he touched that wooden door, Xavion and Du Baishu looked at each other again. And then, as if he had made up his mind, Xavion clenched his teeth and shouted, "Who is it?" While shouting, he fiercely pushed the door open. Almost at the same time when the door was pushed open, a gray shadow flashed across the room. As if it had been startled, it jumped from the table to the bed and turned around at the same time. Its two eyes rolled around and looked at the two people standing at the door with their mouths agape and eyes wide open. It squeaked, squeak, squeak, squeak. "Shall we?" Xavion and Du Baishu called out at the same time. "Goo." Xiao Hui swallowed the fruit in its mouth and then picked up a mountain fruit beside it, bit half of it in one bite. eating in high spirits. Big Bamboo Valley observed Silence Hall. Right now the ground was littered with Xiao Hui's fruit stones, thrown everywhere. Compared to the solemn and serene look in the past, it was rather comical. Right now, everyone in Big Bamboo Valley had gathered here. Even Tian Bui, who had always been bad-tempered, upon seeing this scene, only frowned but did not get angry. His face was gloomy, not knowing what he was thinking. These 10 years, everyone knew. Xiao Hui had always been with that person, never separated. Right now Xiao Hui was here, but where was that person? That day in front of Qing Yun Hill Tongtian Peak, Illusory Moon Cave, Xavion and the rest saw, ghostly with their own eyes, also saw the scene of that little junior brother being severely injured by Zhu Xian ancient sword, after which numerous people surrounded and hunted him down. Although after that there was no more news of him, and even faintly heard, he had been rescued by his accomplices. But why would Xiao Hui appear here? Xiao Hui appeared. Where was that person? The same question lingered in everyone's mind, making their hearts heavy. In an observed Silence Hall, only Xiao Hui scrupulously munching on the fruits. Other than that, there was another extremely happy dog, completely different from the rest. De Huang. This big dog, right now, was extremely excited, completely disregarding its master's gloomy face, barking incessantly, circling around the table that Xiao Hui was crouching on, a bright De Huang tail wagging to and fro, extremely happy. At times it even leapt up with its front 2 legs, crouched beside the table, its dog nose sniffing Xiao Hui here and there, occasionally sticking out its tongue, licked Xiao Hui a few times. Xiao Hui grinned, scratched its head, casually grabbed an apple beside it, waved it in front of De Huang, and then threw it out of observed Silence Hall. De Huang barked loudly, immediately jumped up, its 4 legs flying, dashed out of observed Silence Hall. Everyone was shocked, looked out. De Huang actually caught the apple in mid-air before it hit the ground. At the same time, immediately ran back, crouched on the table, its teeth loosened, the apple fell onto the table, rolled a few times. Everyone was speechless. Tian Bui even snorted. Xiao Hui, he laughed incessantly. Obviously, it had been an old dog friend. Its mood was very good. The monkey's tail curled, jumped down from the table, landed on Huang's broad back, stretched out its hands to hug De Huang's body. De Huang, woof woof woof, barked incessantly, raised its head and puffed out its chest and ran out, not knowing where the monkey and dog were going to run wild to play again. Xavion glanced at Tian Bui and Saru, stood up and was about to go out to chase the 2 animals back. Tian Bui, he coldly said, "Let them go. That monkey has lived on this mountain for many years. Since it is here, it will not leave." Xavion acknowledged, slowly sat down. Tian Bui was silent for a moment, said, "Other than this monkey, you and Lao Lu did not see any other human figures?" Xavion and Du Baishu shook their heads at the same time, said no. Tian Bai's face turned ugly, suddenly waved his hand, said, "All right, all of you go out." Xavion and the rest looked at each other, but their teacher's order was like a mountain. They did not dare to disobey, and could only slowly retreat. When they left, Hidaji was attentive, asked Suru, "Teacher's wife, this ground is full of fruit pits. Do you want disciples to clean it up?" Before Suru could speak, Tianbui already angrily said, "Let's talk tomorrow. I told you to go out. Did you hear me?" Hidaji was as quiet as a cicada in winter. With a whoosh he retreated, in a blink his figure disappeared. Suru rolled her eyes at Tianbui, said, "Why do you vent your anger on them?" Tianbai's face was filled with thoughts, pacing back and forth, suddenly raised his head and said to Suru, "You say Lao Chi. That person, could he be nearby?" Suru pondered for a moment, lightly said, "He, that person, has always been the most sentimental. If he wants to see you once, it is also reasonable. Just that with his status, most likely he cannot show himself." Tianbai's countenance changed. His fat face was uncertain, unspeakably strange. Suru glanced at him, sighed and said, "I know what you are worried about. That day outside the Illusory Moon Cave, although he was injured by the Juxian ancient sword, but after all he did not die. And didn't the rumors say that there was an accomplice who rescued him? When Darren and the rest reported to us afterwards, They all said that the gray monkey was not by his side, from what I see. Maybe he knew the danger at that time, and so purposely did not bring the monkey with him. And after he escaped with serious injuries, the monkey wandered around Qing Yun Hill. In a situation where it could not find its master, it ran to us. It is not strange. Tian Bui frowned tightly. Suddenly his mouth made a sound, as if he was scolding someone. Suru did not hear clearly, asked, "What did you say?" Tian Bui did not answer, snorted, his brows relaxed, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked towards the rear hall. Suru looked at his back, shrugged her shoulders, feeling helpless. Just as she turned her head back, suddenly Tian Bui called out softly. Suru was surprised, quickly turned to look, couldn't help but smile. Tian Bui seemed to be preoccupied, did not look at the ground as he walked. He accidentally stepped on a fruit pit and slipped. Just that Tian Bui was, after all, not an ordinary person. With his level of cultivation, he immediately steadied his body. Even so, Suru was already laughing out loud. Making a fool of himself in front of his wife, Tian Bui felt ashamed. His face turned even darker, hatefully scolded, "Damned monkey! When will I skin you? See you eat again." After speaking, without turning back, he entered the rear hall, leaving only the ground littered with fruit pits in the observe silence hall. Suru stood smiling. Chapter 355. In a blink of an eye, Xiao Hui had already returned to Big Bamboo Valley for a few days. In this period of time, it seemed as if it had left Big Bamboo Valley for almost 10 years, towards every grass and every tree. The monkey was still so familiar. Throughout the day, Xiao Hui and Huang played and played, running here and there. The usually quiet Big Bamboo Valley seemed to have become livelier these few days. The dogs barking and the monkey's shrill laughter reverberated in Big Bamboo Valley from time to time, added some liveliness. Early in the morning, the Big Bamboo Valley disciples came out in twos and threes, looked at the monkey and dog playing and running on the empty ground outside Observe Silence Hall. Couldn't help but reveal a smile. He dodgy smiled and turned to the crowd. Ever since little junior sister got married, it has been a long time since it was so lively here. The crowd nodded and sighed. At this moment, suddenly someone coughed from Observe Silence Hall. The voice was loud and imposing. The crowd was shocked. Tian Bui stood there, quickly went up and paid his respects to his teacher. Tian Bui casually waved, considered dismissing the crowd, and then his eyes were also attracted by the Huang and Xiao Hui. After a while, he snorted, said, "Two ignorant beasts, barking like crazy so early in the morning, really not letting people sleep." The disciples were startled, just that due to their teacher's dignity, they dared not say anything. Tian Bui scolded a few more times. The gist of it was that he had wasted rearing this stupid dog for so many years. In the end, it was still so useless, actually playing so passionately with a stupid monkey. The crowd found it funny, but naturally they did not dare to laugh out loud. Unexpectedly, after a while, De Huang, who was playing far away, suddenly barked loudly towards Observe Silence Hall. Tian Bui. "Woof, woof, 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 woof." A series of dog barks in the morning was extremely piercing, and looking at De Huang's arrogant face, sticking out its tongue, it seemed to be dissatisfied with Tian Bui. Instead, it seemed to have heard Tian Bai's curses and was dissatisfied. The disciples wondered at the same time, has Big Yellow really gained some attainment? If not, given how far away it is, as sharp as its ears are, it won't be able to hear us clearly. On the other hand, it'll be a different story if it's an enlightened old dog. While everyone was speculating, Tian Bai's face flushed with anger because of De Huang's offense, angrily said, "Rebellion, rebellion. Now even a dog dares to jump out and make a ruckus." Old 6. Amidst the crowd, Du Baishu's entire body quivered, jumped in fright, quickly stood out and said, "Teacher, disciple is here. What instructions do you have?" Tian Bui seemed to be enraged, pointed to where Big Huang and Xiao Hui were still barking loudly, angrily said, "Today at noon you will slaughter that stupid dog for me, stew a pot of dog meat to eat." After speaking, he hatefully turned and entered Observed Silence Hall. Du Baishu stood rooted to the ground, cold sweat dripping down. He lost his voice and said, "What? Master this." Before he finished, Tian Bai's figure had already disappeared. After a moment, the crowd behind Du Baishu laughed out loud. Xavion and the rest almost choked with laughter. Du Baishu was anxious and angry, said, "What are you all laughing at? This is teacher's instruction. What should I do?" Xavion walked up, kept his smile, although his eyes were still smiling, but his expression was serious, made a solemn and serious look, patted Du Baishu's shoulder, sternly said, "Junior brother, this is the heavy responsibility teacher has entrusted to you. You must complete it well." Du Baishu was about to cry, anxiously said, "Who are you lying to? Who here doesn't know teacher's favorite is De Huang? Don't talk about killing it. Even if we pull off a strand of its fur, teacher will not give us a good look. Now if I really accept teacher's edict, when teacher regrets later, can I still live?" Xavion laughed, turned, and walked away. The second disciple Wu Di walked over, nodded heavily to Du Baishu, said, "Lao Lu, you are really a clever person. Understand teacher's true meaning. Since it is so, you just don't listen to teacher's edict." Hidaji looked up at the sky, slowly walked away. His mouth, however, intentionally or unintentionally said, "But heard what teacher hates the most is us disciples who disobey teacher's edict." Once teacher knows that Lao Lu dares to ignore teacher's words, his laughter drifted with the wind, but he had already walked far away. Du Baishu was like an ant on a hot pan, pacing back and forth at the same place. Looking back, he saw that everyone had already walked towards the kitchen. He could not help but shouted angrily at the back of his senior brothers, "You guys have no code of brotherhood. Sooner or later there will be retribution." His voice passed over, not knowing if Xavion and the rest heard it. Only saw from afar Xavion did not even turn his head, only stretched out his right hand and waved once in the air. Indistinctly, also seemed to hear their laughter. Stupid dog, dead dog. Woof, 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 woof. What? You still dare to bark at me?" Du Baishu clenched his teeth, scolded De Huang, who was tied to the tree stump. "It is you who are meddlesome, causing me to be assigned such a lousy errand by teacher." Nearing noon, Du Baishu, under the gloating gazes of his senior brothers, caught De Huang, who was running all over the mountain, tied it to the tree stump at the kitchen door. Xiao Hui, hanging on the branch with its tail, seemed to not understand what Du Baishu was doing, swaying back and forth on the tree, watching the man and dog fighting under the tree. As for De Huang, obviously right now did not have any good impression of Du Baishu. The dog's face was ferocious, barking at Du Baishu incessantly. Du Baishu scolded De Huang incessantly, but definitely did not dare to really do as Tian Bui said, slaughter De Huang and make dog meat stew. His teacher's temperament was eccentric. Who knows, when he comes out and sees De Huang here, he might take his anger out on him instead. Thinking of these, Du Baishu was really worried, did not know what to do. De Huang was obviously very dissatisfied with being tied to the tree stump, opened its mouth wide, revealing its sharp fangs, growled loudly at Du Baishu. Du Baishu was distraught, stared at De Huang, shook his head, muttered to himself, forget it. Anyway, I am unlucky, better go and cook first. Hope teacher will be in a better mood later." Speaking, he turned back and walked towards the kitchen, his face frowning, no longer bothered with De Huang. When he reached the kitchen, De Huang's barking was still heard incessantly, but it was probably a dog barking alone, not much meaning. Very quickly it quietened down. In order to gain Tian Bai's favor, Du Baishu put his heart and soul into cooking this meal. He was really concentrating on it. Suddenly, he heard De Huang's barking from outside the kitchen, and then it quieted down, followed by what seemed to be a low woo-woo sound. Du Baishu did not take it to heart, wholeheartedly focused on cooking. Anyway, outside the door right now, none of his Shi Xiang, Master, and Shenyang would come here. He was happy to have some peace and quiet. After finally cooking a table of good dishes, Du Baishu let out a sigh of relief, took a towel to wipe his sweat, walked out of the kitchen. Unexpectedly, just as he walked out, he was startled, only see a length of rope hanging above the tree stump. De Huang and Xiao Hui were already gone. Du Baishu was very anxious, looked left and right, did not see any trace of monkey De Huang. He thought, could it be that one of the Shi Xiang actually played a joke on me at this time? He immediately ran to the disciples' bedroom, asked one by one. Unexpectedly, no one knew anything. Some even joked with him. But how could Du Baishu still have any mood to joke? His mind was stuffy, spinning around. At this time, suddenly a loud barking came from afar. Everyone was surprised. Du Baishu was the first to rush out, carefully identified. It actually came from Sha Danan's room. Du Baishu hurriedly rushed over to that room. The rest of the Big Bamboo Valley disciples also rushed over. When they entered to take a look, they saw Da Huang standing in the courtyard, barking loudly towards the sky, and Xiao Hui was nowhere to be seen. Everyone looked up at the sky, only to see the blue sky high up, endless blue, not a bit of abnormality. Xavion and others quickly searched. Unexpectedly, after searching all the rooms, did not see Xiao Hui's shadow. Just like its mysterious arrival, Xiao Hui, this monkey, once again mysteriously disappeared. Not knowing why, in Da Huang's barking, everyone felt lost. That noon, when Du Baishu nervously welcomed the lunch, only Serene appeared in front of the disciples. Everyone felt strange, but Du Baishu was surprised and happy, but his face still showed concern, asked, "Shenyang, why did Master not come?" Suru rolled her eyes at him and was too lazy to care about him. She only faintly turned her head and looked towards the direction of Observe Silence Hall, a strange expression on her face. After a moment, she then said, "Your teacher, he has some thoughts. Not in a good mood, don't want to eat today." Everyone was surprised, but looking at Suren's expression, they did not dare to ask. On Big Bamboo Peak, it seemed to have regained its former tranquility, other than the occasional Da Huang barking to the sky, as if nothing had happened. A figure floated down from the depths of Qingyun Hill, light and mysterious, like the legendary spirit in the mountains. Just as this figure swept to somewhere at the foot of Qingyun Hill, suddenly paused. The originally rapid speed made a low whistle sound in the air, abruptly stopped, causing the grasses and flowers under his feet to make a sound. All of them were blown to the front by the wind. It was ghostly. No one knew which Qingyun Hill boundary ghostly came from, but on his shoulder, Xiao Hui once again lay on his shoulder, reuniting with its master. Xiao Hui was clearly very happy. Its long tail curled up, the end even wrapped around one of Ghostly's arms. Especially when that big wine bag on Xiao Hui's body suddenly bulged again. The fragrance of wine permeated the air, and Xiao Hui was even more delighted, hugging that big bag lovingly. Every now and then it would open the bag and drink a mouthful, a satisfied expression. But Ghostly clearly would not be like Xiao Hui. Right now his expression was indifferent, his eyes swept around. The dense forest was dense, a stretch of silence. Only indistinct bird cries could be heard. Ghostly suddenly sneered, faintly said, "Come out." No one answered. Ghostly also did not speak, only slowly turned his body, quietly stood facing a certain direction. After a while, someone suddenly sighed and said, "It has only been a few days. I didn't expect Gongzi's skills to improve to such an extent. It is really admirable." A figure flashed. A black-attired man walked out from the depths of the forest. It was Mr. Ghost. This person had always been mysterious and unfathomable, always appearing in unexpected places. Ghostly looked at him, his gaze indifferent, although he did not reveal a disgusted expression, but clearly he did not have a good impression of this person, said, "You are waiting for me here. What's the matter?" Mr. Ghost's eyes wandered, first looked at Xiao Hui on Ghostly's shoulder, especially stared at the third eye on Xiao Hui's forehead for a while, then looked at Ghostly, said, "Why, Vice Sect Head is not willing to meet me?" Ghostly snorted, did not speak. Mr. Ghost nodded, said, "This is also up to you, but this time is not that I have something to say. It is Sect Head Ghost King had sent me a letter a few days ago, asking me to pass a message to you." Ghostly frowned, said, "What is it?" Mr. Ghost said, "Ghost King's Sect Head heard that you were injured in front of Qingyun Hill Illusory Moon Cave. He was very concerned, ordered those hiding in Central Plains to find you, and also helping to pass the message. If Vice Sect Head is found, if Vice Sect Head is unwell, you can return to the Wildlands to recuperate. Your health is the most important. If luckily Vice Sect Head is fine, then there is one matter. I will have to trouble Vice Sect Head." Ghostly was silent for a moment, said, "Speak." Mr. Ghost behind the black veil seemed to laugh faintly, his laughter low and deep, said, "Ghost King's sect head already knows the beast deity had fled in defeat in this Qing Yun battle. This beast had killed countless of our holy sect disciples, is our holy sect's irreconcilable enemy. Right now, it is a rare opportunity to kill this beast. This time, he must be escaping to the southern border that he is familiar with, and in the sect, only Vice Sect Head is more familiar with the southern border. Therefore, hope Vice Sect Head to the southern border to pursue and kill. It can also be considered as doing a great deed for our holy sect." Ghostly was silent for a moment, nodded and said, "All right, I will go." Mr. Ghost nodded slightly, but at this moment he suddenly walked a few steps forward, came before Ghostly, suppressed his voice and said, "But this trip, Sect Head specially instructed me privately to pass on a message to you. Although it is important to pursue and kill the beast deity, but the most important thing is still one more thing." Ghostly was stunned, said, "What?" Mr. Ghost's eyes glimmered, quietly said, "Sect Head instructed, there's a ferocious beast Tautai beside the beast deity. No matter what, even if the beast deity escapes, but this ferocious beast Tautai must be captured alive and brought back to the wildlands. This matter is of great importance. Vice Sect Head must remember. Ghostly frowned tightly, looked deeply at Mr. Ghost, said, "What does Sect Head want Tautai for?" Mr. Ghost stood up, his tone returned to normal, faintly said, "This is not what I am able to know." Ghostly watched for a long time, suddenly turned, without even looking back, his figure like lightning, swept out in an instant, disappeared in a blink, leaving Mr. Ghost standing where he was, looking at the direction Ghostly had left. After a long while, suddenly muttered to himself, "Strange, how can his skills in such a short period of time advance to such an extent? That day, that group of black-attired men who saved him, who were they?" The whispers drifted with the wind, quietly reverberated in the dense forest, eventually disappeared. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.